I've got 6:04, calling our meeting to order at 6:04. So this is the special budget workshop of the Duncanville City Council, August 13th, opening up at 6:04. And the Duncanville building is closed to public access, but we are still continuing live broadcast on channels 192 and Uverse 99. The YouTube recording will be provided on August 20th, 2020. And we do have some citizen comments that have been submitted. So I will be reading those very shortly. One of the things that we'll be doing tonight is folks going through the proposed budget and getting a briefing from our finance director and all of the staff, and any questions we have staff available for us to get these questions answered. I want to commend Mr. Summerlin and all of the staff, Tia and all the rest, for Jennifer putting together another superb book for us for this information. 218 pages of financial data, which is not an easy thing to do, but again, it's a testament to the superior staff that we have in our financial accounting, and that's why they get honored in what they do. So I want to commend them for what they do. One other, just a housekeeping note, we are being recorded, we are live. We have to use our masks if you're not eating. So I would ask that you use a little more volume when talking in order to be able to get it picked up for the microphones. That may not be necessary from a technological perspective, but I'm just asking for that anyway. Ms. Jameson, yes?
Yes, on the citizens' comments. It's been brought to my attention in other cities and other elected officials groups on the Zoom, allow the people to hook up as part of the group and make their comments, and then they are dismissed.
Agenda, but we can accommodate that. We could not accommodate it originally. The go-to meetings, I don't know if you remember that platform, limited the number of like council members. We couldn't get all the council members on there.
Right.
And had some other technical difficulties. So as we went into COVID, as we got our way through this, I think we were able to kind of improve that. So if that is a desire of council to try to do that for future Zoom, we can look into doing that. We just have to make sure they get that capability. I think we've got that. We've not posted the agenda. I'm not going to post that first thing in the morning because what we're doing.
I wanted to make sure I got the comments right.
So Chris and I will work on trying to get that.
So,
But they'd still.
Will we have that capability by next Tuesday?
Yes,
we have
sir.
it now.
We have it. Yeah. I mean, we have to reformat and work it in the agenda. But we should be able to accommodate that. So if it's assuming that's still the rule that.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, I can make it happen.
We just have to reformat the agenda.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we will go. I will read the citizen comments that we have submitted at this particular time. The first one is from a Deborah. Now, if I was in Germany, this diphthong would be Meyer. I'm not sure if it's Meyer or Mayer. But Deborah Meyer of 622 Dawson here in Duncanville. Requesting the city to not raise taxes, follow Dallas's lead. Older citizens are being forced out to leave our homes we've worked so hard for to able to afford to live out our lives. Respectfully, Deborah Meyer. Next one is from a Juanita Marchant at 318 Swan Ridge Place. Hello. Right now things are tough for a lot of people. However, raising property taxes to potentially fix a problem to create new problems is not the answer. Let's all work together to accomplish the goals. Thank you. The next comment is from Benjamin and Misty Bain, 102 Walnut Street, Duncanville. On page 35 of the budget, under debt service fund, there's an error. The service center should say 2.4 million, not 24 million. Next paragraph, we are opposed to any proposed tax rate increase. We are aware that a 3.5% increase was discussed, and perhaps that has changed now. Next paragraph, many citizens have been affected by the downturn in the economy due to COVID. Businesses and citizens are already struggling, and we don't need to increase the burden. Next paragraph, the City of Dallas plans to balance the budget without a property tax increase. Without a property tax rate increase. This is what Duncanville should be seeking to do as well. We should be looking to make budget cuts in all departments with the exception of public safety departments that work tirelessly to assure the health and safety of citizens in our community. In fact, most citizens are supportive of increasing our policing efforts in the city so that we can have more patrols around businesses and in neighborhoods. Next paragraph. Citizens in most every budget hearing have supported a reduction in spending on consultants, yet we continue to rely heavily on consultants. Eliminating our reliance on consulting services can save a tremendous amount of money while we continue to work through this economic downturn caused by COVID. Last paragraph. Please make an effort to balance the Duncanville budget without increasing property taxes. Benjamin and Misty Bain. And the final citizen comment I have is from Ms. Patricia Ebert, 115 South Greenstone Lane. Thank you for maintaining the current property tax rate. Can we get a homestead exemption? Next paragraph. Is a 2% employee pay raise factored into the division summaries of salaries? Next paragraph. What division summary lists the consultant's fees? Next paragraph, page 42. Do we still need the $270,000 line item for police/detention services now that the jail will be moved to Tri-City Jail in DeSoto? Next paragraph, page 146, solid waste division. Please explain the 85-cent a month rate increase for residential solid waste, recycling, and brush pickup. Last paragraph, page 154. Conventions and Visitors Bureau Division has wrong text under FY 2019-20. The text here is for the library. For Tricia Ebert, 115 South Greenstone Lane. Thank you, citizens, for that input, and I believe everything that our citizens have asked for to be considered and discussed are going to be covered in tonight's session that we have before us. So, item 3A. On the agenda is discuss and deliberate the fiscal year 2020-21 proposed annual budget concerning general fund expenses and revenues, utility fund expenses and revenues, 2021 capital improvement plan, and fee schedule, including alcohol ordinance fee discussion, miscellaneous departments and funds. The City Council may direct staff to make additions, deletions, or corrections to the budget, which is the subject of the discussion and deliberation for future and/or final consideration by the City Council. Before Mr. Summerlin comes up to make his presentation, I'm informed that there have been some edits made to some of the pages. And I want to turn to Ms. Jennifer Odie, if you would explain which pages have been edited. And I presume when we'll send out an edited digital copy on our website as well for all of our citizens to have. For you here on City Council, you've already made those changes in our books, in everyone's books, or
no,
not?
I have not, just to...
Okay. So, Ms. Odie, if you'd explain where those changes are, please.
I apologize for catching some typos after the fact that you've received your budget books, but just wanted you to confirm with you guys where we filed with the city secretary and the fund summaries that you have here and everything. All of those are correct. The numbers have not changed. Just typo errors in the actual document that was put together. So I just want you to have the right information. And
You're going to need to speak up through
okay.
and ask too.
All right. So, trying to take much time here. First one really is a CVB, one that was caught. Sorry. And we could do this afterwards if you want, because it doesn't...
Well, for the record, everybody that's listening,
Right.
and to get it on the record, these changes
Okay.
need to be made. No, you don't have to go through and change the book, but just
Okay,
go through
well,
them
then
and hand
okay.
it to the people,
Okay.
to the council members, but let us know what they are.
Okay, so it's the CVB one that was commented just now, and yes, the library had the wrong information here. And I have corrected that page to have the CVB information on it. And then there was just a...
So that is
Page...
Ms. Ebert's comment for
Yes.
page 154.
Yes.
It's been covered.
Yes.
Okay?
And the other one, actually is from the general fund. It was the revised budget, designated operating days, and the designated operating reserve on page 38. We just had the wrong numbers in there. It doesn't, again, affect the ending balance numbers or anything like that. And what's already in the budget overview and what we're going to do in the presentation, it now matches back to that, so. And then the last one is the,
Yeah, let me interrupt you just a quick second. By Governor Abbott's direction, individuals making speeches can not speak through a mask.
oh. So wanted to wear masks, not wear masks. And sorry, and then the last one is just.
I'm just concerned about being able to pick it up. I really am. Okay.
And then the last one there was that police administration, the FTE count. It was 0, but it should have been a 1, but the total was correct, so it's just correcting that typo. That was page.
Page what?
Sorry, I have too many
What'd you
things in my
say,
head.
page what?
Page 81.
81.
Why don't you pass them out?
Yeah, well,
You want to go ahead and pass them? I'll pass them out. I just
Yeah, pass them
didn't know
out.
if it would cause too much disruption.
No.
So-
We're already there.
Already. Yeah, it's that whole, no, I'm sorry, this is for you only.
Oh.
I'm passing out individually there.
You've already put them together?
Yes, ma'am, I did. So you just replaced what you got there.
Pass mine down to her.
No, I got it already.
Yeah, sure.
So we'll keep this moving.
Go ahead.
Mayor, members of council, if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead and start while y'all are making the changes to your book. Again, kind of dittoing the mayor, I think it'll be an understatement, and I think council certainly appreciates this, that this has been an extraordinary year when it's come to trying to file budgets and put the numbers together. Obviously due to COVID, I think, COVID gets, used quite a bit when it comes to disruptions of everyone's personal lives, loss of family or friends, and disruption to the budgeting process is no exception to that. Specifically is our everyone's reliance on getting proper taxable value numbers that we can rely on. Typically, this time of year, you would have certified rolls by the end of July. And in my career of doing this, and Richard and so forth, this is the first that we've seen where we have not had certified taxable value rolls at the end of July anywhere in this state. And so what we had in July were certified estimates, not certified rolls. And we'll kind of touch upon that a little bit later, but while that's important, because we're going to show you another option for you to consider, that this budget was based on the best information that we had in July. It was based on those certified estimates. That's all we had. Since the time of the filing, the time that we got you the book, even those changes have still been occurring as far as the calculations and so forth. And again, Richard will touch upon that. But I want to stress that as we come into this, that this has been an extraordinary year when it's come to this. And I know council appreciates that and understands that and will help as we go further in the discussion of the budget for fiscal year 21. Thank you, Mayor.
And following on to Mr. Frederickson's comments, I don't think any of us in any business realm have ever been faced with what we're facing today in terms of trying to set a budget when you don't know what the bottom line is. You don't even know the top line. So again, kudos to our staff for doing a whole lot of what I would call some linear regression to try and come up with a statistically valid budget for us, even though at this point in time, we don't know how tight it's going to be. But I think Mr. Summerlin is going to try and give us some degree of confidence in terms of the projected budget that we have before us. One of the things that I will comment on is that where I came from in business, once you set the budget's concrete, and you fluctuate and show how bad things are, how good things are based on the budget that you agree upon at the outset of the fiscal year. Fortunately, the way the municipal accounting practices are permitted, the budget can be modified as we go through the year. And so that gives us the flexibility to say something has to change because this environment has changed. We are in an environment, as it's been used many, many times, just unprecedented. Nobody knows how to really pin things down in terms of what we're doing. But the fact that we're getting, it's an oxymoron, a certified estimate, in terms of trying to understand that. So, I think we're going to do our best to work through and understand the budget that we have before us if things happen to change.
And you're right, just real quick estimate, so council does approve the revised numbers. You'll
Yes.
see those at the beginning, so just to be clear, while there's changes and so forth, we're coming to council for any kind of changes to the budget
Certainly.
during that year, but yes, you're right, we can monitor, like sales tax and those kind of things, so.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
In January, who knows what the landscape is going to look like in January.
Absolutely.
But we'll get an update as we go, month by month, to find out how we're coming up against the budget. All right, with that, Mr. Summerlin, the evening is yours.
Thank you. I want to reiterate a little bit about the things that Paul commented on. If you'll pay attention to what I'm about to present to you, you're going to find that when we get to the tax rate discussion that there's very, very different information that's become available to us since we filed the budget. It is going to require quite a bit of discussion among the council members to give us direction as to where we want to go and how we want to proceed with this. So I'm going to jump right in. And we're going to take a look at the 20 adopted to revise how that changed. And I'm only going to cover kind of what changed since the June budget workshop. We anticipate that we're going to end the 20 fiscal year with about 96 days of fund balance, or about $8.7 million in our ending fund balance. Excuse me. The things that changed since we had the June workshop is that we had a $411,000 overall increase in revenue estimates. Primarily $500,000 increase in sales tax revenue. Our sales taxes continue to come in stronger than what we anticipated. If you remember in the June workshop, I estimated that we would have a 25% drop for the remaining months that we did not have. And of course, since the June workshop, we've had several more months of actuals come in. So I revised that calculation, and the way that I did that is I took the actual sales that we've gotten for October 2019 through May 20, and that's $6.6 million. And then I took what we received in the prior year for June through September and deducted 15% from that. And we just got our sales tax yesterday for this month, and we were actually up a very fraction of a percent over what we were last year. So we feel like that even at a 15% drop, we're probably a little too conservative with that. But since we don't know exactly how the pandemic recovery is going to work, we're going to leave it at that. And just a reminder that 75% of our sales tax goes to the general fund and 25% goes to the economic development.
So you're saying that we did the same as last year?
What we got, remember we're 2 months behind.
Oh.
Somebody help me
So
here.
it's really good. What you're saying is
June sales tax was a fraction of a percent above where June was last year. And that's phenomenal.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what okay.
Yeah.
Because I was getting ready for bankruptcy when y'all first introduced it.
So it's better. And then we had an $89,000 decrease in our franchise tax revenue. If you remember, Senate Bill 1182 allows certain franchise taxpayers like AT&T that do cable and video service to choose the lesser of the two and only pay the lesser. In the original budget, I thought that maybe they were not going to stop paying that, and of course I was wrong. They actually did pay one additional quarter that I wasn't expecting, and then they stopped. So they're of course taking advantage of that. I wanted to just show you what the sales tax history was. The two columns that are in black are where we were in June when I gave you the estimates, and you can see to the columns to the right how I've increased that based on the actuals that we've received since the June workshop. Some of the challenges that we still face, of course, is that sales tax revenue is significant, but it's less significant than we originally estimated. And so our recovery from the pandemic, from a timing perspective, there may still be some bumps along the way, but we're feeling a lot more positive about it now than we did back in June. Of course, restoration of deferred street maintenance is continuing to be a challenge, and continuing to provide exceptional services with our lean staffing levels is always a challenge. And we continue to have more and more regulatory and reporting mandates. They just keep coming at us faster than we know what to do with them, especially in the accounting realm. We just always having to implement new accounting standards and do new calculations. All right. Moving right into the 21 proposed general fund budget. Again, we anticipate that we're going to end the fiscal year 21 with $6.7 million in fund balance, which is right at our 75-day fund balance target. These are some of the changes in the revenues, and I'm going to talk about each one of these as we go. You have copies of the slides in your handout, so you can refer back to that or refer to them now. Essentially, $566,000 decrease in sales tax, and of course the methodology that I used was to base that on the 20 revised sales tax. So of course that's less than what it was when we talked about it in June, and then I took an additional $100,000 away from that to be on the conservative side. Potential new sales tax, Starbucks, Thibodeau's, authentication cooking expansion, and then we got some new lease space that we hope are filled up soon with tax generating businesses. Proposed general fund budget revenue decreases. We had a $127,000 decrease in franchise tax, and again that was due to Senate Bill 1152 and the telephone cable franchise revenues to continue to decline. People find other ways, people going of course to cell phones and then continuing to find other cheaper alternatives rather than have cable fees. $25,000 decrease in interest revenue due to the low interest rate environment that we have. $45,000 decrease in rec fees, and those are continued effects of from the COVID-19. $140,510 decrease in other revenue, which is really all from losing the Eon lease. So then we get into the revenue increases, $1.2 million increase in property tax revenue. So July 23rd, the Principal Appraisal District gave the certified estimate that was made available to us. And then on July the 28th, we filed the budget based on the estimated tax rate calculations that we had at the time. And we determined at that point in time that we didn't require tax rate change. And then on August 3rd, we got the Dallas County Tax Office preliminary tax rate calculations, and they verified that my calculations essentially were accurate, and we got all the remaining data elements. There are a lot of elements that go into calculating the tax rate, and at the time we filed the budget, I did not have all of those data elements, but I had the majority of them. And then we're going to need a much more in-depth discussion when we get to the tax rate section that's coming up soon. So an $84,500 increase in permits and fees, and that's due to some potential new businesses, and 49,000 increase in fines associated with what I hope to be return to normal public activity, people out and about on the streets, etc., and doing business as normal. So looking at the proposed expenditures, this is a snapshot of those, and I'll discuss those in general here. $205,000 cuts in travel and training, and then 17,000 reduction in our fleet replacement contributions, and that's because we have a healthy fund balance. 49,737. That's the budgeted savings from the detention cost center reduction. The total savings are expected to be more than that.
Can I get, just address that? Yeah,
Sure.
Since that was a comment that was brought up, actually, we're anticipating about $95,000 worth of savings. The budget reflects 49,000, but we're looking at, we can't be certain on the other 10,000 in overtime costs that will be saved, along with some magistrate costs that are associated with it. But the savings will be more than what's reflected here. That's just the budget numbers reflected, but we'll have more that will be part of that savings to move our jail facilities and that service over to DeSoto.
If you would elaborate just a bit more on that comment, the 270 is still a necessary expenditure.
Yeah, that's good, thank you. It brought up, well, what about the 270? We're moving from basically $365,000, which is what we spend for the jail, and moving to 270. So one of the things council on the back, and we hear about, are the cuts, savings, efficiencies, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're saving from personnel costs that will be shifted over. So, we'll see, not just personnel costs, but other cost savings and other departmental budgets as part of the jail facility. So the 270 is the price that we pay that will go to DeSoto to pay for them to house our prisoners. So we're just shifting that over, but we're again saving roughly $95,000.
Okay, so 270,000.
270 is going to be the guaranteed rate for next year, and then for next fiscal year, as opposed to $365,000.
I also wanted to just comment too, because she asked about the division summary, having it there. In future budgets, we'll absorb it in another, cost center, but just because of the history, we wanted to be able to demonstrate, had it in-house, now we're moving it out of the house, but once we get that history, we'll move it into different sections, so you don't always have a division summary for just that one thing, if that makes sense.
Did we have an amount when they came and presented something to us?
Yes, we did.
Okay, that was the same amount?
Yes, sir.
Okay. $279,398 retiree medical expense. It was previously in the medical insurance fund. We had to bring that in to the general fund. $69,300 increase in IT replacement fund contributions. Our fund balance was suffering there, and we increased that from a 30% funding level to an 80% funding level. But we had $146,000 increase in animal shelter and SWRCC costs combined. I'd like to remind the council that multi-city ventures like the animal shelter, the regional communications center, fire training officer, emergency management coordinator, they promote regional unity among the cities to help provide our citizens with best services and economy of scale and efficiency. So we do share with those budgets, and so the breakdown of that 146 is 49,000 to the animal shelter, 97,000 to SWRCC for their dispatch software, and some changes where they are no longer using their fund balance for their ongoing operations. And then $188,229 in compensation for a 2% mid-year increase. And so
Weren't we going to talk about that?
Todd's gonna get into that in just a minute when he does his part.
Also, I want to ask about 279,398 retiree medical expense previously medical insurance fund. Why was it moved to general fund?
Because we did dissolve the medical insurance fund.
It was,
It was just,
it remembers the self-insurance fund that we had, and so
Yes.
we're doing self-insurance, but then because we went to fully insure, we've now just basically taken those costs and just shifted them within each of the cost centers, whether it's general fund, utility fund, or whatever. So when we say medical insurance fund, we say previously medical insurance fund, that just fund doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
But the cost would still be reflected. We used to house them in that fund when we self-insured.
I think it's worth noting at this point on the insurance, so I think Jennifer was involved in the negotiations for our outsourced insurance, and was predicted to have a 19% increase in our medical insurance, and we got a 0%. Todd, I'm sorry. Todd.
That's okay.
I am Jennifer.
So those hard-nosed negotiations ended up with a 0% increase in medical insurance versus a projected 19% increase. So well done, Todd.
Thank you.
and also you might, I know that we get criticized a lot for using consultants, but this is one of those cases where we did have our health insurance consultants, and they recommended that we go out for bid. We did go out for bid, and they ran the bid process, and they also helped Todd with the negotiation. And as a result of that bidding process and that negotiation, we went from a double-digit potential increase to no increase, a pass on an increase. So it was phenomenal, and it was probably some effect from COVID because people delaying things. So there were,
How much was the consultant?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. How much was a consultant? You left that off.
well, we
pay them an annual.
yeah, we paid them on an annual fee.
fee for their services. I don't have off the top of my head what we pay them on a monthly
Approximately
basis.
$38,000
For the year?
a year.
And they do what?
So they
Just
are our
insurance?
consultants, our advisors for all of our.
It's that couple
healthcare.
that we met, man and wife.
Yes, yes.
We've had them for years at 38,000.
And they handle all of our healthcare, not just medical, dental, vision, everything.
I don't think it's that same couple.
No, it's not the same couple
No,
too. They
no.
retired a long time
Yeah,
ago.
it's a new.
Different
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's not Husband Life, it's a different company called.
They don't sell us, they're our broker.
But they're your
So
broker.
They help us
They
go out
with
to bid.
Claim
to
issues
seek
and
the
so
best
forth,
services,
for
they help us
38,000
negotiate.
savings we get. But
They
they help,
have
they
all
do
the
more than
industry
just
data that we.
find those, they do all
It'd be just like you
process.
trying to get insurance on yourself.
All right, we've got multiple conversations going on here, so we need to pin it down. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so moving along, oops. So moving along, some of the things from the non-operating budget that changed. We had in the previous year, we had a $340,400 transfer to medical insurance fund. That's of course no longer needed now because we've dissolved the fund, and that was a decrease. And we had a $425,662 decrease in transfer to one-time project fund. Did not have any funds available. $80,000 increase in transfer to the grant fund due to two-year funding of the CDBG grant. $265,000 increase in our transfer to street CIP. And those goes for $50,000 for the road design for Beaver Creek, Swan Ridge, $75,000 design of East Carr, $61,000 Wintergreen Phase 1 payment to Dallas County, and then $79,000 for the US 67 Green Ribbon Contract Administration.
Are we paying 79,000 to Cedar Hill?
No. Pacheco Coat, who is our LA that designed that, we're paying them because of the changes that TxDOT made to our contract procedures. So part of the Green Ribbon funding helps with that. But they're coming in here to help process that to make sure that we pass audit compliance because they're using federal funds as part of the TxDOT Green Ribbon. That actually adds more complexity to it. So that doesn't go to Cedar Hill, that goes to the consultant that would be, which is Pacheco Coat, who you've seen come in here before, they're the ones who do the design work and so forth. So they'll know how to process those invoices through TechStop.
So we're having to pay somebody to do the invoices?
That's
They're
actually,
they're doing more than just that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
so yes, so a portion of that is tied to costs associated with making the changes to designs based on feedback from TechStop. The biggest part, again, which is 60-some thousand of that, are so that we can hire the consultant to help us prepare the binders and binders of paperwork that's required to get reimbursed from TechStop. That expense is actually reimbursed to us.
By
TechStop. That's the expenses related to the management of the contract that we're local letting are being reimbursed to the city. So, but we're letting that contract to Pacheco Code, and then when we get the invoices every month, we file them and then we'll get reimbursed for that part of it, the part that's related to contract administration.
You know what would be good, at least for me, at some point, is for us to have a listing of all of the contractors that we use and the amount of what they're used for. I know we have it broke down in different cost centers, but it would be good at some point to just have the overall number and who we use and why we use them. So when those questions are asked, we
Are you asking
know.
for consultants or just
Consultants,
contractors?
consultants.
Yeah, consultants.
Just having a whole big list of consultants.
I agree.
Here's what we're using, here's why we're using it, and here's the amount we spend on the consultant. Now we're equipped to answer those questions when asked of us.
Okay.
I do have a question on, it's like we've been paying for the One Degree Phase project, was the great project with the county for a very long time. I thought we almost finished with that, and now it's in phase 1.
So phase 1 is actually the contract that's going on right now on the east side of Main Street.
Okay.
And we have not paid any of it. The parts that we've done up to this point is we paid to secure the right-of-way. We paid for all the signal equipment. That's been bought and paid for.
Okay.
This balance is the $61,000 is the part of the cash that we had to put in. I think we owed like a total of $300 and some thousand.
Right. Remember
That is the amount that's left over after we paid for the right-of-way and the signal equipment. We haven't paid for that yet.
But we already had that reserve, do we have that amount reserved already?
No, we're putting it into the budget so that we can pay for it. We didn't have it set aside. It would be paid out of general
Oh,
fund.
close and below.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so essentially, the things that changed in the non-operating budget in terms of increases were that we took most all of the additional property tax revenue, and we used that to increase the reserve for the P25 radio project. As you recall, the price tag for that was a little over $2 million. We reserved $350,000 for that last year, and we're doing an additional amount of $1,633,000 this year. And so that 1.2 is the difference between the 1.6 and 350 that we did last year. And then a $100,000 decrease in economic incentive payments because their agreement with the Fords ended. So again, just some of the challenges that the 21 budget faces. Of course, the budget has no new programs, no new projects, no new positions in it. We continue to have to maintain our current service levels with our current staffing, and maintaining competitive pay and benefits is continuing to be a challenge because we're competing with our other cities around us that continue to offer better fringe benefits and higher salaries. Compliance with unfunded regulatory reporting mandates, we continue to have those come out, and each time one comes out, we just have more work to do, more papers to file, etc. And then restoration of deferred street maintenance continues to be a challenge.
I want to ask you a question on the slide before, when you said 100,000 decrease in economic incentive payments due to the commitment ending in F defaults.
Yes.
Wasn't that motel also?
I'm sorry.
45,000 on here, I saw in the budget.
This is a general fund. This was general fund only. Yeah.
So you're saying that one was in
The commitment.
economic development money, sales, the 45,000 from the motel that was through? What's it called?
The HOT fund?
That's what I'm checking, if it's EDC or HOT.
We're on page 151. What page is that? Hotel tax fund is on page 151.
Yes, the 45,000, I'm sorry. The $45,000 that you were referring to, Ms. Jameson, was from the Economic Development Corporation. That was a grant to the Hampton Inn and Suites once it was built.
Was a grant, wasn't that an abatement?
No, it was an incentive once it was
Hampton
built.
Inn and Suites.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we just gave them 45,000. A hotel motel taxes.
Not from hotel motel taxes. The $45,000 was an incentive from the DCEDC.
Okay, UCUC.
Is that the end of it, right?
That's the end of that.
So, can I ask questions now? Okay.
Sure.
So, so you're telling me basically, you know, we didn't think we were going to rebound so good, I'm shortening it, and we did better than we did, way better than, I mean, a lot better than we thought.
From a sales tax perspective, we did, and we also, because of some very complicated stuff, we have we had legal compliance with having our tax rate stay where it's at and not have to change it. But I'm about to blow that up in a few minutes, so hang on.
But as far as a city performing as well as it could, I'm talking about performance of a city. I mean, our little businesses and our people stayed pretty steady out there. I mean, there may be some other things got to whop us in the head. Okay, I get that, what you're trying to say, but as far as...
Yeah, from the time that we met with you in June, again, we didn't have a lot of information because when we reported to you in June, we were we were still 2 months. That was 2 months prior. And so we were looking at really the start of the pandemic as we were starting to report. But as Richard alluded to, with our sales tax today, it is better. But I would caution, and again, Richard's right, as we go forward, we want to just be cautious. I think to your point, Councilmember Anderson, it wasn't as, you know, again, we were looking at a much more stark picture 2 months ago.
So I'm getting to a point.
From a sales tax.
I'm getting to a point I want to just recognize, and the point is that a lot of the other cities that are, our city is tight and it's filled with small businesses and stuff, and it appears to me, just from my tenants and people that I see, that these little small businesses are, in some cases, are doing even better as the big stuff kind of falls. In other cities, what I'm seeing in other places right now, okay, is when the city has got a sprawling, the more sprawl it's got, more, you know, it's not as compact as we are. We're seeing those cities like suffer that's got lots of big retail, big box retail, big cinemas, that stuff. And so I'm saying the basics, a town that's really tight and has the basics and lots of small businesses, I think are going to always outperform in the future, especially in the future world we're going to. And I think it's showing up in the numbers that I'm hearing about. So I just want to make that comment. It may be that in the future when we're thinking about what's best for the city, it may be what made us be better than others here, what made us, and what's best for the city, maybe we ought to be That's what we ought to be trying to attract. That's all my
So you're kind of saying though, when you don't have much, you can't lose much.
Well, when you don't have a lot of stuff that goes out of business.
Right.
Okay, we don't, but the things that we have, the basics, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker kind of stay in business. All I'm saying is, it's like the basics, everyday quality of life items, you know, always are going to survive, and these big fancy tricky things, you know, out here don't. I mean, the markets, and I'm just saying it's something we should study more and look at. I mean, watch in this. I'm watching it very carefully.
Well, I think we have to take into consideration, I agree with what you're saying in terms of our businesses being in a small, compact geographic proximity. What's happened though, in terms of what might be able to support this status quo in our sales tax, is the stay-at-home mandate. People are staying home, they're operating more on the internet, they're ordering food on the internet, they're ordering dine-in, dine-out on the internet, they're going to the drive-thrus because they're convenient, they're local. They're not having to drive 15 miles where they used to go out to eat somewhere in Arlington or Irving. What are they doing now? They're going to our Popeyes, they're going to our McDonald's, they're going to Poppins, they're staying kind of home. And that's because of where we are and how we're tight. So I agree with what you're saying, Monty, that there's this behavioral aspect that COVID has come into play and causing people to change their behaviors. And to our advantage, or not to our detriment, these behaviors are positive. Now what we'll see with July and August, we don't know.
Well,
but I think it goes, my thinking of terms of behavioral changes in purchasing activity by our citizens, what you're saying applies as well. We're tight, we're compact. When I want to go out to eat, even if I want to use Uber Eats or I want to use DoorDash, I'm going to use a local restaurant because they're close.
Well, if you have 100 small businesses versus 5 great big ones, the 100 are going to probably outperform in a area like, and that's what I'm saying. We're suited for lots of small business. All I'm saying is that I think that we should be trying to go after the things that make us stronger financially and can survive through more of these things coming in the future. That's my whole point, is that those seem to be thriving right now. I'm telling you, they're thriving. Those little bit, I have a bunch of them that rent from me, so I know they're thriving.
We lost some too, like the jeweler that has been here, golden things. And
we lost several. We still lost several, but I'm saying
businesses.
not near the percentage, not even a fraction of the percentage of what's happening to corporate America and the big box and the things.
July and August are going to tell the story as well. We're looking good for June, but I wouldn't. Let's be nice to ourselves for June, but we'll wait and see what July and August do.
By the way, there is actually philosophical ways of city building that prove this point too. So I'm just that.
That's a good point.
Good evening all.
All right, Todd.
I'm going to be covering compensation and personnel. So from a compensation standpoint, this slide depicts the last 11-year history of the compensational changes for general employees. General employees are non-civil service employees. And as you can see, there were several years within that range that were 0% changes. And these would have been across the board increases as approved by City Council. So for non-civil service employees, they do not have annual automatic increases like civil service employees do. We conduct salary surveys, and when warranted, we target specific positions for market-based adjustment when necessary. Over the years, there have been increased healthcare costs, as we all know, but as we discussed this year, we were very fortunate to get a rate pass by Blue Cross Blue Shield. And it's important for us to stay competitive in order to recruit and retain our employees so we can keep our service levels as high and as efficient as we can. So our benchmark cities, we have currently 15 benchmark cities that were identified or established as a result of a compensation study back in 2015, and that were approved by City Council at that time as our benchmark cities. So we continue with them, and the ones highlighted in red are the best Southwest cities. The cities are within the Metroplex of similar size or similar positions to which we can perform annual comparative analyses. It's important for us to continue using the current cities for comparison and historical purposes. Okay, so this year we did conduct, like we do every year, an annual salary survey with our benchmark cities. This slide depicts an aggregate look at the differences from the average minimum salaries and maximum salaries over 4 different types of position groups. So you can see we have exempt, which is FLSA exempt, those who are supervisors and manager level positions, non-exempt employees who are subject to FLSA overtime, police, and then fire. And you can see for the most part, we are under compared to the average mins and max, but we are not under by much. And again, this is across our 15 benchmark cities. We are above in the non-exempt for the maximum level. And you can see the number of positions in each group. So there were 21 exempt, 36 non-exempt positions, 4 levels within police, and 4 levels within fire.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
So just do a read as on the police, on the police line. So we have
Okay.
4 police positions,
4 levels, yes.
4 levels.
4 levels, so it would be police officer, police sergeant, police lieutenant, assistant, police chief.
Okay. And then the read as would be, of those 4 levels of positions, our salaries are 7.27% below.
Correct. On an aggregate level, below the average
Below the
min.
average.
Correct.
And the max is the median or the average?
It's still an average.
It's still the average.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Good question, thank you. So then delving more into police and fire, just looking at the best Southwest comparisons, because that's where we want to maintain at least our most competitive venture. We always try to be at least number 1 or 2 within ranks with the best Southwest. And again, looking at the average difference between min and max for each actual level within police and fire, you can see that we are actually above on all except for fire captain, the max and the fire captain. We're slightly under the average for the max level of salary. So we are staying competitive. And then that'll get into some future slides that I talk about. So an overview of compensation and some considerations is we don't know from among the 15 benchmark cities what they're all planning to do for their next fiscal year. We do know for the best Southwest cities that at the beginning of their fiscal year 21 that they are anticipating across the board increases. So Cedar Hill has informed us that they are looking at a 3% across the board, DeSoto 1%, and Lancaster 3% across the board.
You did that same survey last year. How did it pan out? Did it do exactly what they said it were going to do?
I'm not certain. I can find that out for you. I believe they did, Councilman, but I will find out for you. Okay, so based on the results of our annual salary, we in Duncanville are hoping to take a more conservative approach to compensational changes this year, and we're not proposing to give an increase at the beginning of our fiscal year. We're proposing a 2% across the board increase at mid-fiscal year, like March or April, and of course that would be dependent upon the economic conditions or considerations at that time, and that would be sales tax and also any kind of COVID reimbursements and what other considerations finance may have. So the cost of that 2% would be $188,229.09 to the general fund, and the total cost across all funds, $236,000 and some change. Skilled labor force is still very competitive in the region and Metroplex, and it remains critical for us to maintain our full staffing levels within the skilled labor force so that we can maintain our service levels for the city and for our citizens. And this is, we can't just bring people into some of our skilled positions without certain certifications or licensure. So, it's really tough to recruit and to retain in these levels, so we must maintain our competitiveness. And we do look from our annual salary to see if there's any reclassifications or anything we need to change in terms of the pay plan for these positions. For example, this year, maintenance workers and utilities, which is water, wastewater, we found that we were below significantly, maybe 10% below our comparative benchmark cities. So we are recommending to reclass that position from where they are in the pay plan, a non-exempt 4 to a non-exempt 4A. This would not change any salaries for incumbents, but it would change the starting salary for beginning newly hired folks, and they would go up from $14.29 per hour to $15.57 per hour. And we, along with the people in the Utilities Division of Public Works, believe that this will help us to not only recruit, but to retain them. We are losing people in the maintenance fields to not only other cities, but to private industry. So really, for us to be able to do our jobs, we have to be as competitive as we can be.
How do you explain to our incumbents that they're not going to benefit from this?
Well, they are above this salary level.
We have no one at this
That is
base
correct.
level?
Nobody at the base level.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, I definitely like that. Let me ask the other question about, and that the employees or the staff that we have transitioned to other cities, how did their salary compare to the cities that they went to versus what you're offering them here? We lost some, I guess, major staff throughout the year.
Yeah, like I said, some of them didn't even just go to other cities, some went to private industry, but the ones who were going to other cities, it was significantly higher. It depended on what city they were going to. So some were going to Dallas, we can't compete with Dallas.
Okay.
But if they're going to a smaller city, it could be anywhere between 1 to 10% increase depending upon which city they were selecting. So we try to do exit interviews on them, and for the most part, it's the salary. They have to maintain the level of economics they need for their household. And we have to do our due diligence to make it competitive and to be able to keep them.
But you're still talking about non-exempt skilled labor.
Correct. Okay, from a personnel perspective, like I show you every year, the number of citizens served by employee for 2020, we are actually more in the middle of the pile now, more towards the midpoint. And we are at around 150 citizens served by employee or per employee. And you can see where the other cities flush out along there. Last year we were more towards the top end, maybe a couple bars over. And the average payroll per employee, we're actually very lean, and our budget is different than other cities, so we're towards the bottom end. And you can see where we fall around 68, 69,000 is the average payroll per employee. Again, a reason for us to try to be as competitive as possible, and the reason for the potential proposed 2% increase at mid-fiscal year. Okay, Mayor, I know you like this slide. So this is our full-time equivalency slide. We have, and it shows the last 5 years. For 2021, we're proposing 303.4 full-time equivalent positions. This does include the reduction of the 5 detention officers in the jail. And you can see, we really haven't changed that much. The reason why there is a little bit of a difference this year, and it may not seem like we're going down as much as we are, is because with the new MUNIS system, we're able to capture the full-time equivalency for part-timers in a much more accurate way that we were not able to do in our legacy system. So we are hopefully being more accurate moving forward with how we factor them out to an equivalency for full-time.
With the new system, what's the baseline number of annual hours worked that it uses?
2080.
2080, not 2076?
Correct.
2080.
2080 for our general employees, 2912 for fire who are shift.
Okay.
So you don't have any 30 hours? So there's no 30 hours at all?
30 hours per week?
No.
Right, so that would be fractionalized, is that a word? So if we have a part-timer who's working 30 hours a week, that 2080 would be reduced to be whatever 30 hours out of 40.
Are they considered full-time FTE, a full FTE?
They would be considered 75% full-time.
How
So
do
that's
we-
why this system can capture that much better than the old system.
How do we answer this question here is when everybody else is laying off, and having to take less pay and stuff, and we're asking for more pay? How do we answer that to people?
I think the best
I mean,
answer, Councilman,
even in
is
my own-
justifying.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I'm sorry, even in my.
I think the best way to answer that is that we have, minimum service levels that we have to maintain, streets, public safety, and, in order to have the employees to be able to handle the service levels that are required, we have to maintain a competitive nature with our hiring and with the incumbents that we have in order to keep them to be able to handle the workload.
I mean, I have the same problem. You know, I'm just trying to figure out how to. I'm trying to figure it out in my mind right now because we're in such a bad. I mean, I can understand why a guy making $14.29 an hour needs to make $17.50, correct, or 18 or 20 even. You know, because you can't get by on, you know, I mean, that, you know. But I understand that to be, you know, I mean, and to lose good mechanics, believe me, and maintenance people and things like that. I mean, that's something you don't want to lose.
No.
But you're also looking at competing. This DFW market is still a very hot market. Our construction costs haven't gone down.
For that kind, but I mean, that's the smaller.
Across the board, I mean,
fraction.
again, and we have specialized, you know, departments, not just mechanics or skill sets from the wastewater, water, public safety. Again, we have five. I guess what I'm trying to explain is that our needs, our employees, you've got specialization that you may not necessarily have in the generalization if you have someone that's working in a lower skilled position across the board.
But I have the same issues. I'm just saying, I'm not saying you're not worth the raise or it's not. I'm just trying to.
Let me try to answer that even better. So before we were having, our building official's about to retire. When he came on, we had maybe 2 that applied, and we promoted from within. It's really, when you look at previously, we had extremely low unemployment that you could barely get any kind of applicants. We're getting some now because it's improved, but not greatly. You see it in the applicant pool of the people that are applying for positions that we have open. We have that building critical positions. That's really how you're measuring that. And again, you're competing against other municipalities because of the specialization of all the different skills. That's really what we're up against. So it's not a private sector to private sector kind of competition. It is the type of positions that we have in municipal government that are specialized that we have to compete with. That's really what it boils down to. So it's not, you know,
industries have the same
our market
thing,
is,
though. I mean,
not, well,
we've lost our planner to another city because of higher pay. We just lost our EMS coordinator to Midlothian.
Well, maybe it'd be better if we had the planner would be like you'd have one of those consulting firms as your planner. I know other cities that do that.
We do. We're doing that now. We do.
That you don't even have to have.
The emergency management coordinator is not something that you can go get consultants. So you know, again, we're kind of that.
And Councilman, we do look at every position when it becomes vacant to see, you know, what is the need of the department? Is there some way we can reorganize? We're always looking at that, but as Paul said, there's some highly specialized positions that we just can't do without. And we do not get the applicants for them.
I guess I need to get out of the private sector and the public so I can get a raise.
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
And again, the raise is proposed,
Totally.
depending upon the economic considerations that happen between now and March.
And I hope you guys, I think the world of you. I mean, you know, you guys and the people that work around here, I really do. But it just doesn't seem right to me right now for some reason.
Can you go back a couple slides and then maybe keep going, the one that,
Which one?
the one that shows how we compare to the 150.
This one?
Yes.
Right, this is just how many citizens are serviced by each per employee.
Right. Now, can you break that, and maybe money, this might help as well, because I know you mentioned last time you liked this slide. I'm just wondering, Todd, how you can make this slide a little bit more
Informational?
Yeah, how you can really make it really, for a citizen, to just understand it as well. Whereas if we wanted to spill this out to a citizen, they wouldn't really just understand this slide.
I think.
What else can you say for
The
us?
higher the number, the leaner you are.
Yeah.
I mean, don't give you more than that. What else? Anything else?
And the less time you have to do your
Basically,
job because you're dealing with the citizens.
We serve more citizens with fewer people than the other cities do, or at least the cities above us on that chart. You know, we have to provide the same basic services as all of those cities do, no matter what.
Okay.
So basically, we do it with fewer people, and I mean, I know within my staff, we're exempt, but we work a lot of hours.
Mm-hmm.
If you took our hours and divided into our salary, our per hour rate would be pretty low.
Don't do that, man.
And Councilman, if you couple it with this line,
People are like that.
if you couple that with this line, you see that we are on the bottom, almost at the very bottom of the average salary. So, we're doing a lot of work, but we're not really paying the employees what's based on the comparison cities, so it's hard for us to be attractive.
I like it. I was just trying to find an elevator speech.
Yeah, and I
The
think
elevator
it,
speech of both of these slides, what elevator speech could we use? I mean, it's justifiable. I hear you. I'm just using
Like also, though, what we've seen is it's the lower end people, like that $14 and $15, that's not right.
Yeah.
But I think some of the higher end people,
Well, again,
you wouldn't drive for as far as these people are driving to work if we were so bad. Wouldn't do it. But $14 and $15, I wouldn't come here for that.
again,
You're vulnerable
let me
to
just
lose
say
people
this,
when you're
we're
paying them
competing,
14.
our pool that we're competing against are other cities. Again, if they're in the private sector, they want to go and using that theory, then let's see them.
What are you
We
talking
would
about?
bring in anybody that came from the private sector that had the skill set that we need, that would, again, in accounting, or again, in, whether it's a field maintenance employee that's in parks.
But you know what, we don't advertise to those people either.
We do.
How?
Indeed,
Indeed.
and other, yeah, we've had to.
Because we
We've
do
had to
it on city
expand.
stuff.
We tried to expand that pool or that outreach as much as possible. So it's not just TML, especially on the other positions. So, I mean, again, with accounting positions, whatever that field is, we're,
And we try to do incentives, like last year, you all approved the on-call stipend, so, we try to give little incentives, bonuses where we can, to make ourselves more attractive. Hopefully, our healthcare is competitive now that the rates aren't going up.
And factually, do you consider 2% a raise or 2% just keeping me whole?
Well, without healthcare going up, I think it's slightly going up, slight raise.
That's a raise. Keeping whole would be good right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
well, again, it's a
most
mid-year.
people
right?
Even staying close, even just staying close for me,
Losing their
I know in my business right now, if I can just stay within, floating business, that stay in business, it's good, so.
But again, for the past several years, people in this metro, around the nation have been moving jobs for 3 and 4% change in salary. Because that's how tight things really are. And then when you put that against incremental inflation,
So
what are you
maybe,
doing?
maybe there's
You're
another way
basically
to
keeping
keep.
people whole, but they're willing to move to find a little bit more. But where's your loyalty as well? People are moving for a couple bucks an hour.
Yeah, but people.
And you lose, and you've been in business, Rob been in business, what does it cost to train a new employee versus keeping it old?
Correct.
And
You're
again,
talking 30 to 40% more to
Yeah.
bring on a new employee than to give somebody 2% to keep them around.
to go back and retrain. And we keep talking about the lower rate, but, engineers, finding engineers, EITs. The EMS quarter that we lost was in the upper 90s. That is what the market, that's what we're competing against. The market is dictating these rates. She moved to a smaller community for more. That's what we're up against. Again, we're competing against other cities. And this is a 2% mid-year. I think that's the other thing too, we're being very conservative. This is
There's
not
a big
across the board at the
2%.
beginning of the fiscal year. 2% mid-year to see what the numbers
Then
are. If
how's
the numbers-
Dallas not paying it, not doing any increase?
Again, each city's gonna be different.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Dallas isn't, again, but Dallas also has different pay scales than a Cedar Hill will have, or a Lancaster's have, a Frisco. If we go back to that one chart, if you've got on the benchmark cities, I mean, they're all over. So, yes, ma'am, you're right. Dallas may be doing it different because of their different kinds of revenues
Yeah,
that
there's
are
no
coming in
increase.
versus the other cities that we're competing against. If we're able to get employees from Dallas that can fill those positions, that would be great for us.
It's not the 2% to me, it's not, I guess it's the, because that's not that much money. I mean, and it doesn't really, it's not gonna really benefit anybody that much, I realize that. It's just gonna kind of keep you, I mean, but it's basically of creating an organization. I think that, I wish we had an organization here that the place was so, so good, the work environment was so good, and the city was so cool that you didn't want to leave, even if, because I had people that have been working with me for 20 years with me, and they don't make the top of the market. They make They make below the market, but they like what we do, they like the, you know, so they stay.
Well, Councilman, I'll tell you, when we do the exit interviews with employees, most of our employees who are leaving do love working here, but it does come down to economics for a lot of them.
Of course it does.
Well, it's always about the money, I mean, so.
Right. Now, service credits play into it.
Service credit for team,
Yeah.
for TMRS.
Yeah.
I don't really have that discussion with many employees. I don't know if most employees are even attuned to the updated service credit. I haven't really had discussions on that. I've had more discussions with retirees on COLAs than I have with employees for our updated service credit.
Moving on.
Okay, and then lastly, there are no new positions for consideration for fiscal year 2021. Any questions that we haven't already discussed? Thank you all very much.
By the way, I think you guys do a good job, so don't take my comments
No, I
in
don't.
any way.
Thank you.
Will the police FTE number be different on the other budget? Will the police FTE numbers and salary stuff be presented to us?
They were included in the,
Included.
yes. If you want that broken down, I can break that down for you.
I was curious of how much 2 additional police officers, street police officers.
I can't hear the question. I
How
can't
many
hear the
more
answer.
street police officers would cost if we had to add 2 additional officers on the street? What would it cost us to have 2 additional officers on the street?
We can get that information.
Well, the entry level salary for a police officer is what, 58,000 now?
But then you have benefits, everything else.
Yeah, that's not fully loaded cost. That's just salary. So add another 30% to that, you've got your fully loaded cost.
Plus a car and equipment and all that stuff.
I was just say car equipment, benefit. We can get that information for you, just bear in mind, right now at this point, we have 3 vacancies already. So you can say, let's put in the budget, I apologize. I just broke that. You can say, put in the budget 2 more officers, it's hiring the 2 more officers. Again, you go to TML,
Right.
every city's got open positions. Dallas, you know, while they have some savings in the budget, they're also are down over 200 officers.
Yeah, they're closer to 320.
Yeah, 320, but I think after they do a budget, they may reduce those numbers, but that's just less, again, still a few officers on the street. But almost every city you go to, you look on the TML website, you'll see who one has openings for officers. So we can get that information. My point being is if we have 3, now we have 2, it's 5.
Before we had double digits though.
That's right. The police department has done a fantastic job in the recruiting and getting those filled.
You have enough
But we have
cars?
5 vacancies in fire.
You have enough cars and stuff, if you had these 3 or 4 more, you have enough cars for them, you have to buy more.
I have to double check that, but to your point, there might be another additional vehicle. we have to delve down into that, but we can get that information based on 2 officers.
Okay, so what we need to do now is to delve into the tax rate discussion. And this may seem a little bit complicated, so I'm going to try to slow down a little bit. I wanted to kind of push through some of the other stuff because I think this part of the presentation tonight is going to take a little bit of time. I'd like to start out by talking about how our taxable value per capita, which is simply total taxable value divided by the population, how we compare to other cities. And as you can see, we're on the lower end of that spectrum. That means that we have a much lower tax base than the other cities. In fact, 27% lower than, I took the average of Lancaster, Cedar Hill, and DeSoto and compared to that to Duncanville. So our taxable value per capita, 27% lower. Same thing here.
Do you have those handouts?
We printed you a set of handouts.
you've got
They're right there on the other side of your sandwich. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We're on page 35 now.
Go ahead.
So when you look at the total tax levy per capita, again, this is total tax dollars divided by the population for the lower end of the spectrum. Duncanville's 27%, again, lower, of course, than Cedarville, DeSoto, Lancaster average together. You know, again, this is a reiteration of that we provide the same basic services at a much lower cost than our surrounding cities. So I want to get into the.
Can I ask something this?
Sure.
Do you have the taxable value per acre? If you
I don't
have the, because I bet the chart would be the other, would be the other way. And that's something I'm seeing people look at more and more, study per acre, how, you know what, because our people may be living more compact, so our taxable value will be more efficient. You know, so our taxable value per acre, I bet, is higher than all those other cities. But we are.
And then go ahead, one more time, sorry. I'm sorry, when you finish.
I'm sorry.
So
He doesn't know.
we'll probably use that same screen when we talk about economic development, right? To see if a business want to move to the city, they would look at these numbers?
Well, potentially they would look at those numbers, but probably not. I don't know that a business cares about those numbers.
You want to make sure you want to make sure the city can afford, in their own mind, their product.
Not necessarily. I mean, to
That
some
number has nothing to do with that.
No, that is this. There's another number. It's what, $52 or? Go ahead. Then. I'll wait.
I mean, to your point, Councilman Cooks, there's some correlation to what you say in terms of can people afford that, but it's really not speaking directly to that. I'm just trying to tell you how we stack up against other cities.
Okay.
People that the other cities that have more business and more commercial value, of course, that takes the burden off the residential when you got higher taxable values for your business.
Okay. All right.
So I want to go over the nomenclature that changed with Senate Bill 2. I've talked about this before, but the effective tax rate is now called the no new revenue rate. You'll hear me refer to that as the NNR tax rate, no new revenue. And that's the rate that's applied to the current taxable value that would yield the same approximate amount of maintenance operation revenues in the previous year. The rollback tax rate, it's now called the voter approval rate or the VA tax rate, which you'll hear me refer to. Previously, that was approximately the effective rate multiplied by 8%. And now, with tax caps, that's the NNR rate multiplied by 3.5%. And I'm making this very basic. There's a lot more. I think there's about 52 factors that go into calculating the tax rate. So it's much more complicated than that, but this is the basic essence. All right. On some of the important dates that we have left, we'll have a budget public hearing on September the 1st at our regular council meeting. And then on September the 15th, if we're required to have a tax rate public hearing, depending on decisions moving forward, we'll also have a vote on the tax rate and adoption of the budget and the master fee schedules left on September the 15th. I'd like to remind people that when we look at our tax rates here in the city, and this is true in most places, about half of your tax bill goes to the school district, a quarter of it goes to the city of Duncanville, and then the remaining quarter goes to Dallas County and Parkland Hospital District. So the way that we filed the budget, and it's important to understand that we filed that with the best information that we had at the time. And so we filed that budget with a current tax rate of 743,447, which is what our tax rate was last year. So under the voter approval, that was under the voter approval rate that was calculated based on the certified estimate of values that DCAD provided us.
What was that voter approval rate, you know, Rich? You recall?
I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So under the tax code section 2604, the appraisal district has the right to provide a certified estimate if they do not have enough of protested values certified, finished, settled. And so that's they told us they were going to do that because of COVID and being behind, and that's exactly what they did. So again, the current rate is below the legally calculated, in this case, both the NNR and the VA tax rates. So very, very important to note that we got a lot of additional information, did a lot of additional research and investigation past those initial calculated rates. And so I began to take a look at all the circumstances, and the appraisal district certified the estimate of values with $568 million still in protest. Now typically when we get to this time of year and we get certified roll, we have about 20 million that's still under protest. So you can see that there's a huge increase in that. They also provided an estimate of values that's to be used in the tax rate calculations at 50% of that 568 million that was in protest. And typically they use 70%, but because of COVID and they're being behind, they felt that 50% was adequate. And I had some follow-up questions. I talked with several officials at the appraisal district, and I said, this is not what I anticipated, this is not what I expected. And I said, where are we really going to come in at? Where's our certified roll really going to end up at? And they were pretty confident that we were going to come in at 85 to 90% of that 568 million. Okay? That's a very important.
By law, I guess, they deduct 100% of the value of the protest, so is that right?
No, they submitted 50% of the amount of protest for the tax rate calculations.
For the tax rate calculation?
For the tax rate calculations. So again, that's an important piece to note, because essentially by them providing that 50%, that's why the rate was as the VA rate was so high. All right, so now I've got some more information. I know, or I feel like that their taxable value, or our certified roll, is going to come in at 85 to 90% of that 568 million plus the amount that they've already certified 100%.
And they move really slow this year, and there's tons of there's tons of lawsuits because they increased everything, and they move. I mean, we're just now going before, just even last week, we're finishing up our protest hearings and stuff, and if it goes to lawsuit, it even goes further. So I don't know.
So the exact rate I'm not going to know until sometime after August 20th. And what I did is I said, well, okay, let me go back and let me recalculate the tax rates. It's important to note that the tax rates that I'm about to show you that we filed the budget under are legal. They were legally conforming to the tax law. But I said, what if? What if we had certified roll? And so I come up with an estimate of this. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Well, the wrong way. All right, let me hit this button up here. So when I use the rates that I think they're going to come out with on the certified roll, I come up with this number, 71.9 .1877 cents. Okay, that's lower than where our current tax rate is. Well, I just keep double hitting. Okay, so important to note that when we filed the budget, we had this information here. The Dallas County calculated no new revenue, the NNR rate at 748,609. Voter approval rate 773,007. So right here, we're legally conforming below both of those rates. In fact, when you're below both rates, you don't even have to have a public hearing. You have to have a public hearing if your current tax rate's above the NNR rate. So that's the information based on those certified taxable value estimates that conform to the tax law. But when you go down this next line here, when I calculate based on if COVID hadn't existed and we'd gotten certified roll, where would we really be at? And that's where I come up with the 711, which is about a 3-cent drop from our current tax rate. And then, you know, if we go to this rate, then we do have to have a public hearing, of course, because we're above the no new rate. Again, these are estimates based on estimates. We'll know the exact rate till we get to the 20th. So that difference, just on the general fund alone, is about a 9.4-day reduction of fund balance, or about $844,000. So I said, okay, I've done this analysis. Now let's look at, you know, what if we did adopt that rate for this year, and what would that difference be for next year? So I did a scenario where I assumed that taxable values are going to increase 5% next year, and I looked, and so if we adopt the rate that we have now, don't change it, this is the amount of revenue. And again, this is general fund plus debt service, so this is the grand total package of everything. And versus if we adopt a lower rate, which is where I think the rates would have been had they certified the roll, it's about $861,000 less. That's grand total for both general fund and debt service fund. And then there's also the impact for the subsequent year. Of course, if you adopt the lower rates, your voter approval rate is going to be lower the next year as well. And so an additional decrease of about $687,000. So for 2 years combined, I'm essentially saying about $1.5 million less in revenues. So what we need from you tonight is to have a direction. Do you want to stay at the tax rate that we have, 743,447? It is legally conforming to the tax code. We don't have to change, but it's my fiduciary responsibility. Doggone it. It's my fiduciary responsibility to tell you, you know, and to bring you the information that we think that had COVID not existed, that's probably about where we would be. And the appraisal district will give us those certified values on August 20th, and we would have to go back to Dallas County and have them recalculate the rates to know for sure where we stand. But my best estimate is somewhere around that 711,877.
We would want to do that anyway, wouldn't we?
I'm sorry?
We would like to do that anyway, wouldn't we not? Having to go back?
This is the discussion that we need to have.
So that's lowering the tax rate though, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but their appraisals
Proper
went
tax
up.
rate.
You
Right.
take the inflated values of the market value of our property.
Everybody on top.
Yeah, but if you fought it, you could get it kind of.
If we're gonna have a discussion, let's have it loud enough so everybody can hear.
Like 20.
Monty?
I'm sorry.
You're way below the volume level
Okay,
for
sorry.
people that need to hear what you want to say. So basically what we're seeing here, in terms of the calculations that Rich has made, while we're lowering the tax rate, in terms of, well, not we, I'm just saying this, I'm looking at it from my personal perspective. If you go back that one slide, it really brings it back into focus.
What's yours?
Okay,
This one or the
now
one?
the next one.
This one?
That one right there.
Yeah.
That's the calculation. That's really where we need to focus our attention to understand what we need to do in terms of being in compliance with law, but at the same time understanding what's happening, because our taxes are going, the taxable value of the properties in our city are going up. As a result of that, using the new language that has come into play with the what's it called, the NNR, okay?
And the VA rate.
And the VA rate, what we need to do in order to be in compliance with those definitions and understanding those dollar values, in my estimation, what we need to do is drop our tax rate to $711,877. Because our property values are going up, but if we want to stay at the NNR, which is what people look at, and I think that's what our fiduciary responsibility is as well.
Not the NNR. The NNR is the effective tax rate.
The VA.
The VA rate.
The VA rate.
Yeah.
Then what's acceptable in terms of what's necessary for us to do for our fiduciary responsibility as a council is to drop our tax rate to $711,877 in order to keep that within that VA rate.
So even though we're dropping our tax rate even to $711,877, we're paying more taxes because our values went up. If that's what you're saying.
That's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening.
So what would the rate have to be if it stayed exactly the same? 0.68? I mean,
It would be, based on what I think the values will come in, it'd be 70855.
what is that 0.68? I didn't understand that number on the next slide. The next slide.
I'm sorry.
That number.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was you're right, it would be 689.
That's what it would be, it'd have to be to stay exactly the same with increase.
That's right, and
That would, yeah, that's where I used the wrong term.
That's what I was trying.
Not staying with the NNR, but we need to stay with at or below the VA, the voter approval rate. So we, as a council, can make the decision to drop our tax rate without having to go to our voters and put them to put the city to the expense of putting it to a vote.
You don't have to.
May I interject?
Sure.
You don't have to do that in either one right now. So with the 74, which that Richard showed you that slide, the 74 is legal under the tax code. What we're showing you though is what we think the estimated numbers will be. So you are correct from the standpoint of you can lower it to the 71 cent. Either one of these rates are legal. They don't have to go to the voters. But because of the tax code and how that's being calculated, the 74 cent is still good. However, what Richard is showing you in the new calculation, what he thinks it's going to be, is the 71 cents. And that is the choice that you have. 74 cents or the 71 cents. And that 844,000 is the difference.
Or if you chose the 68 cents, you just have to go cut some more stuff out of the budget.
If that's what you choose.
I mean, I'm not saying to choose that. I'm mostly trying to understand it because it's taken me 2 years here to.
Yes, sir.
figure out how to
No,
understand it.
well, it's paid off. You got it.
I'm trying.
It is yes, sir. It's the 68 cents.
So what Rich is asking for is a straw vote from us, based on his estimates, because we still don't have a certified roll. In terms of, do you want to stay at 74 or do you want to go down to 71?
If somebody asked me, if we voted for 71, if somebody asked me if we raised the taxes this year, what would I say to them?
well, essentially, when you look at the combination of taxable values increasing and even lowering the tax rate, on average, people will still pay more taxes than they paid in the year before. And there's even language that requires that to be stated when you make the motion to adopt a tax rate. Even though you're lowering the tax rate, it's still a tax. They consider that unequivocally a tax rate increase.
It is, if you've got,
So your answer is yes.
yes. If you do the .68, then you're leaving
Then you
it the
do.
same.
And factored into that is what we still have to do to run the city. If we
That's
dropped
what I'm
it,
saying.
if we dropped it down to 68, how could we run the city
Yes,
on
you can.
that kind of an income?
Well, on the other
answer is
hand-
probably not.
On the other hand, I would say that, you know, my property's worth more now than it was. Actually, if I sold it, I can get more money for it. And that's true here in Duncanville, I know that. I don't, maybe not quite today, but, so I can see. I like just having the straight, like you've given it to us, you show us really what is real. You've really shown us what's real, that in this chart,
Well,
I
let's-
like that, so.
Well, it's my responsibility to tell you the information, and so, you know, like
Oh, I'm sorry.
I feel like that, you know, you as a council need to know that, because your decision is gonna have to be based on this information. Again, you know, I can stand here all day long and say that because of the way that the appraisal district did their certified estimate, we don't have to do this. We're in legal compliance right where we're at. But I think you need to know this rate, and that's why I've calculated it and why I've disclosed it. And I won't know for sure whether that rate is good or not until sometime after August 20th.
Okay, so assuming your projections are right, and we lowered it to .689, how much would the negative, how much would the negative be?
Well, you can take.
If we kept the budget, the whole budget?
That's a 10%, that's a 10-cent drop.
Yeah, it would be.
That should have been figured on here, though, we should have seen that.
It'd be about 2 million, I think, somewhere.
And what would that do to our reserve then? What would that do?
That would draw our reserve down substantially.
How many days?
Probably,
I forgot the number.
off the top of my head, something like 15 to 20 days.
So we'd go from 75 days at the end of the year to 60 days. That would be the consequence of us doing that.
Something like that. And, well, there'd be more consequences than just that. We'd have to go back and do budget cuts and probably reduce a lot of stuff, personnel.
But if you didn't do budget cuts, we wouldn't run out of money, right? Would we?
Well, again, you got to also bear in
We're not
mind
gonna run out of
that you've got the subsequent years that will be coming before us with the 3.5% cap introduced by Senate Bill 2. So what Richard's presenting you is the result of Senate Bill 2, which is in essence the 3.5% cap on the values that we have. And so that's what we're saying. This is what we're showing you from a recommendation standpoint. Again, as the mayor mentioned, we present you a budget that has fitted to run the city. Again, no new positions or anything like that. We also have a P25. Again, a lot of the additional, or in this budget, we had those monies going to the P25 system, which is the radio system that we have to replace. Not replace, new radio system to be compliant, P25 compliant. And so, Councilman, I'm just stating the facts. We have to have radios for public safety as well as for building. So,
I go ahead.
the 844,000, if that, let's say you adopted the 71 cents, that would come out of the contribution to the P25.
I just trying to get clear, if we did go to the 68, if we did do that, and one of the reasons you don't go to that, because then you can't raise it back
In
up.
subsequent tax years, you've not
There's
done
other
that
reasons.
either. There have been increases, and so you've never gone to that rate, because you're, again, trying to fund a budget and provide services to the citizens. So that's really what you're looking at.
But if you did, if you went to that rate, if you decided to, I'm not saying that's the way I'd vote, I'm just playing it out. If you went to that rate at 68, then you got a 3.5% cap, or what's the cap from that? if you go back.
All of them are the same.
It's all the same, I mean, that's
They're all
what.
But the cap is gonna be based on that, though, it's gonna be
Yeah.
based on a lower.
Yeah.
That's, okay.
Yeah, where you start
So
from.
the next,
That's be-
so
That's
that
what
following
the
year,
plan-
the new values, you would apply that 3.5% cap again.
To the
with
point
exception.
six.
That's right.
I got
So
it.
you're gonna see that continual trend.
Okay.
And that's assuming it keeps up with inflation, costs, and everything else that occur.
And then if you did that, instead of having a 75-day, there would be more consequence, I mean, if you didn't change the budget, if you didn't cut the budget, if you didn't cut
Lower
it,
our reserve
you just spent your reserve.
for this one year, and then you've got subsequent years, which we do not know what that will look like.
I'm conservative on 0.71.
Well, how about we just go around, like I've been doing, around the table by district number, and just take a straw vote and see what you think. So, Joe?
I got a question on the 7 point, or the .743, if we leave it there, it doesn't raise anything. Only reason I would want to do that is because August 20th, I'd like to see what it is. So I would like to stay where it's at. I mean, of course, I'd like to bring it down, but I'm also very conservative, and
That's not
Okay,
conservative.
Don?
That's just the opposite.
I'm going off of Richard's estimate, the .718.
Okay, Monty?
I'm still unsure, but it would, for sure wouldn't be more than .71. It would be that. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure not interested in keeping it the same.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, 0.718.
Okay, Johnette?
I'm kind of leaning to .68. I've had the phone ringing off, people asking, please do not raise the taxes, that people are struggling right now. They're hurting. And this is older people and people who've lost their jobs, and they're telling you, we can't afford this. And why would you even think about it? Why are you talking about it? Why aren't you cutting back?
Well, I vote for the 7-Eleven dropping to 3 cents. So we don't have unanimity, Rich, but you've got consensus for the
So we'll
7-Eleven. And that's just a straw vote, because we still don't know what's gonna happen after you get the numbers for August 20th.
So
Just
what we
an
will-
indicator of where we're going.
Okay.
What we will do going forward is we'll get the certified roll from Dallas Appraisal District on the 20th. We will request that Dallas County recalculate the NNR and the VA rate, and we'll see where that comes out at, and then we will be forwarding that information to you all. And if that's the consensus, then we will restructure the budget based on that decrease.
Yeah, and if you would, so that we don't have you shooting from the hip, go ahead and calculate the dollar values affected for the new NNR, whatever it's gonna be, and the VA all the way across.
Okay.
So in the number of days reserved, so we've got a good, clear picture of that.
Can I ask something else? I mean, I'm just asking for going forward. It's like, okay, so if we did lower it way down and then we're stuck raising it in the future, our only hope then is to fill in the gaps with new businesses. You said a minute ago, you're always talking about the new businesses helping you out. It's filling the gaps with these little places that we've got, opportunities for economic development. I mean, that's our only hope then. If we want to keep our rates down, we've got to fill in the gap, fill in all these little gaps. Am I correct here? Am I doing that right? That is our way of not raising taxes.
But that gap, as I understand your question, Monty, that gap that we're trying to fill would be the commercial property, not residential
Well,
property.
I think there's opportunities for both, but yeah, I mean, basically.
Basically,
yes.
I'm looking
But
at our
that's where it
city,
makes
what
its
we've got,
money.
we're looking at trying to increase that commercial.
Where it makes the
So
most money is
we
from businesses.
reverse the balance of commercial versus residential, which
So
is
you
what
make-
we need to do.
Because we make the most money putting businesses, these little
Right.
businesses in that pay sales tax and real estate tax.
That's what I'm saying, we
They
need
pay 'em
to
both.
pursue commercial
So-
real estate in order to increase the market value.
So all
of our
these little
taxes.
places like the car thing down here we're working on, and like these other little pieces of land in between pieces and pieces that are blank over on Camp Wisdom and things like that. I mean, that should be
Commercial
our focus. That should be our focus, is to fill those in so we can we can keep the tax rate.
That's what I'm saying,
down.
that
That's
would
where-
tip the balance between commercial and residential
Right.
ad valorem, which we really need to do.
Right, okay.
That's hard to do.
We're like 85% residential.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard to do. I think it just takes a will to decide we're gonna do that and decide what we want it to look like. So I would really want to try to work on, that's where I was trying to learn, finally I learned after this time is what it's gonna take, what it's gonna
Join the club.
really take to fill in those pieces so we know what to do, so we don't come back next year, we don't even think about that 3.5. We're always going down, because in this city, I feel like we don't have a lot of new infrastructure we have to put in, because it's basically all, as far as big
We
roads.
got a lot of streets that have.
We got a lot of maintenance to do. We
Yeah.
got a lot of deferred maintenance. I realize that, but the more taxes we can get per acre, then the gap we're gonna fill with that deferred maintenance of sewer and streets and things like that, so.
Okay,
Thank
so
you for-
we can move on, I think. Yeah, Don, go ahead.
Richard, I'd like to see one more calculation, because I'd like to end up seeing how that affects our contribution towards the radios.
The P25, yeah, basically, we can put that as an additional column there.
And I want to see how the .68 figures.
We've already done that.
Yeah, that's what I asked him to do, John, coming all the way across. We'll have we'll have the NNR, we'll have the current, we'll have the VA as well, all the way in dollar value and impact.
So
And number of days.
I'm not done. I thought I was done. I just thought I was done.
Can we take a rest? You think we can take a restroom break? Or can I just go?
Uh,
I'll just go.
Yeah, go.
Okay, go ahead, keep going.
All right, so what I want to do real quick is to drive through the utility fund. Again, back in fiscal year 17, we started reserving $1.5 million for the AMI project, and then we increased that to $5 million reserve in fiscal year 20. The blue columns are years when we raised the water rates, and so we haven't had a rate increase since fiscal year 18. We've kept the rates the same. So as you can tell from this FY 20 utility fund balance, we are starting to draw into that $5 million reserve that we had for AMI, and that's primarily due to the fact that we haven't passed along any rate increases. We've been getting on average a 5% per year increase on our water rates from Dallas, and our TRA rates for wastewater continue to increase, and we're absorbing that, and so it's starting to endanger that $5 million. We haven't spent the $5 million, it's still there, but we're just starting to use that up. When we look at the highlights of the fund, water and sewer revenue, since we did the budget for revised, are trending up, so we increased that a little bit. Other revenues, overall increase of about $312,000. Part of that was an increase for the TRA refund. They did their settle up from the FY19 audit, and so we had they had $327 that they dispersed to us, because again, this is one of those regional things where we work with the other cities to treat all of our sewer, or the majority of our sewer, with Trinity River Authority. And then 41,000 lost revenues based on service charges due to COVID-19, because we suspended reconnect charges from March through May.
Were we not getting reimbursed from that though?
No.
What was the one that was above it too? The 26,000 unbudgeted increase for city services?
Yeah, these are revenue increases.
What was it for though?
For surcharges. The Pioneer and La Mexicana, they both have
Water runoff.
well, they have what they discharge into the system has bad stuff in it, and so they pay surcharge on that. And we hadn't budgeted for that because they pay us for those surcharges.
In Pioneer, are they gone now?
Oh, I thought they would.
No.
No, they laid off, they furloughed 90 people because of COVID, but they're not gone, they're still here. Last I heard from him, he hasn't brought them all back yet, but they're furloughed.
So then, looking at the increases and decreases for expenditures, utility accounting overall increase of 105,200, utility admin total increase of about 11,996. Water services overall decrease of about 118,000. And wastewater services, we had an overall increase of about 489,000. And TRA did a mid-year cost adjustment because the flows that were coming in to be treated were much higher than what was budgeted, what was anticipated from the cities. Part of that, we always talk about I&I, part of that comes from I&I, so it's important that we continue to go after replacing those old sewer pipe. So then let's look at the solid waste fund. Again, we have the projected ending fund balance of about 640,000. That's about 57 days of fund balance. So we're fairly close to our 60-day target, but you can see that the expenditures exceed the revenues coming in from that, which means that there's pressure to consider a rate increase, and that will be demonstrated further when we get to 21.
What was that other column where we're only 26? Oh, that's what you were projecting?
Yeah, that's what I projected when we did the
case?
budget, when we adopted the budget, but
that was the worst case.
Yeah, our revenues came in a little bit higher,
Okay.
and our expenditures were pretty close to where we budgeted.
Okay.
And we ended the prior year better, so that contributed to fund balance. So, flipping over to look at the FY 21 fund balance, you can see that because we're not raising rates this year, that we're definitely leaching into that 5 million reserve. And so after you take that 5 million reserve down, you're only got 37 days of fund balance. And so we need to think about that for the future as well.
Well, you kind of left me leaving it alert. We got to think about it. I mean, what I see is necessary to do. Is how much thinking is necessary, Rich? It's like this is what we got to do. We got to keep that 5 million reserve for the AMI, which means there's our balance and there's our days. What do I have to think about? Why can't I just say this is the bottom line and this is reality and this is where I go?
I'm not sure that I fully understand your question. The reality is that we're starting to use that up, and we're going to have an update on the AMI project with this next council meeting, and we'll talk more. But you know, if we don't want to consider issuing debt, we would like to have that 5 million there, but because we have not raised rates, we've continued to eat into fund balance. We haven't spent that 5 million, it's still available, and we could say, okay, let's don't do AMI, let's throw it out the window. We can continue to eat into that, but at some point in time, we can't keep absorbing our increased costs. We've got to look at a rate increase at some point in time. It's just, do you want to throw AMI out, or do you want to try to pay for it out of the utility fund, or do you want to issue debt for it?
Well, that's what, the thinking to me is there's the facts. We need to do AMI. It's going to cost.
What does AMI stand for again? I'm sorry.
Automated metering.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure. Electronic water meters.
Okay. So we're saving money to do that, right? I mean, we're
It's
We just been reserving
Yeah,
money.
it's earmarked.
Okay.
It's earmarked, and what Rich is
So
saying,
what-
depending
what-
on how the future
what
runs,
is-
we may have to eat into that reserve, but we don't want to.
What is so wrong with losing money in a year that's disastrous and letting your reserve kind of take you? What is so wrong with that right now? I mean, that would be a business decision that I would think that would be prudent to do.
You mean care about the citizens?
When you keep the rates down and let it, I'm not saying that's a practice, that there ought to be a healthier practice, but I don't think there's anything wrong with losing, not being able to replace all the money in a year. On it like this, like hopefully once in a lifetime.
Well, and that's exactly why we propose no rate increase for water.
That's
and
what you're
sewer.
recommending.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah, well,
Okay.
that's
And
what
they
we
did have one in
propose.
2018, and we're still here.
So there's no, so this is good then?
To me, it's like, yeah, this is okay.
There's no rate increase?
That's what Rich said, we gotta think about it. Like, I don't wanna
$8,000.
think about it. I see what we gotta do, and I understand where we're at, and so let's take it as this is life.
For this year, I would say that's pretty good. We only lost 900.
Because we don't wanna have to go into debt to pay for AMI.
Why would that be?
But we're not having to do that, right?
Right,
No, we're not.
because of that.
We're not recommending a rate increase on here. What Richard is trying to say, however, council, that we do get our water from Dallas Water Utilities. Those costs keep increasing. Costs keep increasing for chemicals that go for treatment and so forth and so on. So those are getting passed on to us. And what Richard's point is, as a trend overall, as those costs increase that are not in our control, and we're maintaining the system and so forth, and we keep those rates that are not keeping up with inflation or the costs that were being passed down to us, that is when we get upside down. So to your point, a one-off is acceptable. That's what the rating fund's for. But as a trend, that is something that we just want to make sure that council's aware of.
How much input do you have back up to them saying, hey, we're not going to pay this? Are you guys doing?
They turn your water off.
Yes.
They don't listen to you? They just.
Go dig a well somewhere to get your water somewhere else.
Let me explain.
Yeah.
I sit on the Dallas Water Rate Subcommittee, and so they sell water to 32 customer cities in Dallas-Fort Worth. And the advisory committee or the rate subcommittee, we very carefully scrutinize their rate increases that they put out every year, all because they give us a binder that's 300 something pages of data of what they calculated for their cost increases. And
So they give you a big binder so you can't read it all?
oh no, we go through it. Trust me, we spend a lot of time going through it and scrutinizing it and looking at it. And about every 10 years, they hire an outside consultant that's independent, that reviews their methodology and reviews their rate calculations to true it up, make sure that it's accurate. So we stay on top of that, we look at that, but Dallas's cost for treating water and providing water to those cities continue to go up. And it is so much cheaper than you can even imagine, you know, trying to have your own water treatment facility.
And remember what Richard mentioned before, the unfunded mandates. I mean, we kind of gloss over that, but that's really important because the TCQ, the legislature, when they pass additional regulations, those get passed on to utilities. If they pass that regulation on to Dallas and it makes that treatment of the water that much more expensive, or the processing, or the transmission, all those things get calculated in that rate that they provide. We go through the same exercise with the TRA. And when they're the main only player out there, then to answer your question, Councilman Anderson, I could go visit Dallas, but
The alternative is that you would have to try to find someplace else to buy your water from, and then all your pipelines are tied into Dallas, so you got to change pipelines over, you know, or you build your own treatment facility plant, and then you got to have a water source. And where are you going to find that? We own a little bit of water rights at Joe Pool Lake, but not enough to treat and do the whole city. And it's the same way with the sewer. You go build your own plant, And I dare say there's no way you're gonna operate that as efficiently as Trinity River operates a plant that takes flows in from us and DeSoto and Cedar Hill and
So the aim
Lancaster.
of my project would be an attempt then to get better and more efficient when we get the water in from Dallas. The meters will be better, real-time information. You don't have a whole month between reads that if there's a leak out there that you had that water loss or you've had to make adjustments. And so that's what we want to present. So these technologies can help in reducing water loss.
No, Richard,
and our cost.
this is not new, because I think in 2012, remind me, we had the same dilemma, right? Where we were passing on, where the city was taking on the amount versus passing it on. Did we have a reserve back then?
We did have a reserve, and we were drawing it down to anything, to nothing. During the fiscal year 12 and 13, the fund balance was about 3.2 million for each of those, and we were getting into a critical position, and so we drew it down based on, forecast and in reality to 2.1 million in fiscal year 14. And so we said we gotta do a 5-year study and come up with rates. And if you remember at the June workshop, I showed you we're way below where the study says we should be because we haven't raised rates.
Yeah, I just want to be careful because I know it took us 5 years to make up.
It took us 5 years to catch back up and to get in a better position. And if you'll remember that right in here in 17 is when we got the settlement for Joe Pool Lake, which was over I think 1.5 or 1.2 or $3 million, which is really where we came up with that reserve. It wasn't because that we had just had excess fund balance. That was the settlement for Joe Pool Lake from the Corps of Engineers, and that's kind of where we seeded that reserve money.
And of course, who made up that 5 years is we raised the rates, and so that's when everybody started screaming that the water rates started going up so high and so quick in the last 5 years.
Yeah. And so, by us holding the rates, I mean, if we had been increasing rates the past couple of years, just, small amounts, then we could possibly stay ahead of this, but we haven't.
But what all comes out of that fund balance? You've got administrative costs and what all?
Well, sure, you have to operate the system. As I've demonstrated before, we have enough pipe underground that we have to maintain that if you laid it on end to end, it would stretch from here to San Antonio. If you did the wastewater pipe that we have to maintain, it would stretch from here.
Okay, that's not what I'm talking about.
Well, no, that is what you're talking about.
No, it's not. I'm talking about administrative fees as far as like management. And also, I'm going to tell you this. Since whatever they've been doing, we have horrible water pressure in my district. Horrible. So I don't know what the problem is, but
we have to maintain a system, and the costs that are part of this, and that's part of why we do a 5-year study, is to have an independent agency come in and look at the water rates that we're charging versus the administrative costs and the cost to maintain the system.
and where is it broken out where the administrative costs are?
Page 124 and 125 of your book.
I'm going to ask another one of these questions, but so the more little buildings I can put on these water lines that are already there, the more profitable or more water we can sell and make profit on, right? I mean, am I right?
We sell.
Yes. So we make. So if I can put more buildings on the water lines that are there and not have to put more water lines in, that's a good thing.
But it's kind of a wash because I'm using more water because I got to sell more water. So I sell more water because I got to use more water.
But if I can be
It's not an issue putting in more
delivery
lines. It's not an issue putting in more lines, Councilmember. The existing lines that we have now, I dare say I don't think we have issues of having to put new lines in because it's pretty much built out. You might have an issue of having larger pipe sizes in replacing that if you had more demand on the system. But what we're talking about, even on the water pressure example that we brought up, that's going to be a new elevated storage tank. It used to be $2.50 to $3 a gallon to build those things, extremely expensive, in order to alleviate the pressures. Again, how do we pay for that? Either issuing the debt, or again, building up the reserves so that we can pay for the replacement of the pipe. I don't disagree with you to say adding more customers on that existing line is very beneficial, but when we talk about replacing or adding, we're not really adding new line because the system is fairly built out. But it is replacing. We have old pipe in, and that's what's happening as we speak. That leads to the water loss.
I'm just again thinking of how we build better to get better.
That leads to the water loss.
That's what I'm trying to get in my mind so I can figure out, how I need to process. So that's all.
So
we
the
build better to get better.
The 1.761, $1,761,710 is what we transfer to general fund for the management of the fund?
That's all the other costs, and that's well below what's recommended to be transferred to the general fund. And then the pilot franchise tax is the type of franchise tax fee that you would typically pay if you were an outside agency. Both of those things are part of that 5-year rate study that we do. I've talked about those many times before. We purposely have kept those flat in the 20 and the 21 budget because we knew that we're tanking on our fund balance, so we didn't increase those at all. They should have been increased, but we didn't.
Okay, and so utility accounting, that is where we are
That's our utility billing department.
billing, okay?
That's all your meter readers to manually read the meters, and your customer service reps, and your billing.
Okay, then the 5 million is what we're sitting on holding.
That's line 11 is what she's looking at, Rich.
Well, that's the transfer to the capital improvement project that goes over to Greg and his folks for water pipe replacement, wastewater pipe replacement, the rehabilitation of water tanks, and all the things necessary to keep the system safe, keep the chlorine residuals where they need to be, and to try to maintain pressure. Which I think, Greg's here, Ms. Jameson spoke of bad water pressure in her district, and I think we've done some engineering work and know that we need another elevator.
Yeah, so we did a water wastewater study. I think I mentioned it at in the June briefing. And one of the findings was that we concur, the water pressure up north is poor. And a lot of that is because North Main's water tower is too low relative to the other Clark's water tower, and so we're artificially running 10 plus PSI low up there because we can't fill up the tanks. So the water master plan reflects a new tower at Redbird and Redbird Park in the very back of it, and then decommissioning North Main. And so one of the benefits is that we would get higher water pressure up north, as well as get some other efficiencies that we're not realizing because the tower is so close to the ground storage tank at North Main. But it's 5 years out because I've got to do a lot of other upgrades in that area to set those conditions for that water tower, and it's in about
Well, it just
5 or 6
happened
years
though
old.
with all this stuff you're doing. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. So whatever you just did changed it.
All we've done the only job that we've done up north is up in Irwin-Keyser. We took out a bunch of little 2-inch lines and put in bigger lines. So we have more volume up there, which is what we need. So where we're going to, again, is to put a tower up north so that we can get the pressures where they need to be.
Well, we can talk about it some other time, but I did take the opportunity to talk to a previous director here, and he said that we didn't need a tower in Redbird. That didn't make sense, so I don't know.
I want to do.
Well, I know that North Main is
Water
10
seeks its
feet
own level.
plus shorter than Clark.
Physics.
And so we're not even using all of Clark, and it is all about elevations.
I know.
And we're not running the right elevations.
So it wasn't ever the right elevation?
No.
And then what you did
So
recently?
the previous director, I'd be a question back to the previous director, then why did we have a tower that was not
10 feet lower
10
than
feet
the other
lower?
one.
Well, I don't know.
That's, I think, a question I would respond back to that.
Why is the tower 10 feet lower?
Which is what attributes to the water pressure issue, that's what it's talking
I
about.
can't fill up Clark.
They can't build it up then?
Yeah.
We can't raise a water tower after it's built.
It's pure physics.
They can't raise it after it's built? How's that physics?
Well, the water level, you can't fill it.
Because we need a higher water level.
Yeah, but it
It's all
would be too
based on
expensive to build
gravity.
it taller?
Not really build them taller after they're built. Because it's structurally set up for that amount of, when you put another
You have to
10
demol-
feet,
you
you're
have to demolish
adding
the tower.
tons and tons of
Right.
weight.
But
So
that would
what
be
we're
cost
gonna,
prohibitive?
build a new one, tear down the old one,
Yeah.
is what
You're not
was
getting-
recommended in the water wastewater master plan.
Yeah, if you tear it down and you lose that capacity, then you then have to make it for that capacity in the new tower. Otherwise, you don't have to have that extra capacity, you can just build that into, or just the new tower could be the additional capacity. So
But-
if you take that down, you lose that capacity.
But what we also did is we have to maintain a certain number of volume of water.
That's right.
For the city. And I also wanted to make sure that we had, for me, because this was something that I was pushing for resilience, is I wanted to make sure we had enough water in the air in case something happened to the city. I've been on a base that lost water, and it turns into a third world country in a few hours. So I didn't want to lose water in the city if something happened for power. I mean, this is critical, but I wanted to make sure we had 8 hours of storage in the air. So we are going up a little bit higher on that, but I wanted to keep the water. We have to keep a certain amount of volume in storage, and I wanted to make sure we had enough in the air in case something bad happened, that we've got some time to get systems restored before we run out of water. Because the water in a ground storage tank without any electricity to pump it into the aerials doesn't accomplish anything. It's all, our
So the
system
only
is gravity
answer
fed.
is to build a water tower in Redbird.
Yes. And it has to be the same height as Clark, or then I have to build two.
How much does a water tower cost?
Like I said, $2.50 to $3 a gallon. So if you're looking at something, the map.
It's about a $1 million gallon tank, so we're looking at a few $1 million. It'd be one of the major, about the only thing we would do in a particular year.
More than that? 10 million?
Depending on the size.
No.
2 million. Oh,
$2.5 to $3 million.
2 million, okay.
Per gallon. And that may be low, by the way.
But that's today's cost.
Well, we'll see what it is in 5 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as he was saying, there's still infrastructure to be able to handle the increased pressure.
I'm building, I've got to increase some of my pipelines.
Expanded to handle the increased pressure.
But you're changing that right now, right?
We're doing some more of the distribution line. We're talking the big trunk lines, so the ones that are 12 and 16 inches need to be upgraded.
So that's not what you're doing now.
No, all we're doing is going into the neighborhoods and upsizing old tiny little 2-inch lines to 6 or 8 inch lines.
Is that working for better pressure at the homes?
It's for better water quality.
But not necessarily pressure. I can see how that'd be lower if you had a bigger line.
Well, I mean, again, if you want to think about it, a squirt gun puts out a very high pressure stream of a squirt gun. But, a hose puts out a lot more volume, but, until you put the little, tighten it down. So, yeah, there might be some issues, and they go together. But we have to get the volumes up in that area too. We don't have enough volume for adequately run fire lines. So the fire hydrants need more than 2-inch water lines. So we're trying to bring everything up to the 6 to 8, and then we've got to move, and we've got to redo the infrastructure, and then we'll build, that's the plan, that's what laid out in the water wastewater master plan, and that's what we're working towards to get that tank at Redbird. And then we estimate about another 10 plus PSI to get you from your 20 to 30 up to the 40 with what we're trying to get you to.
Okay, can we get back on budget now?
For the same thing.
Okay, again, utility accounting overall decrease of 77,000, utility admin overall decrease of 69. Wastewater overall increase of 129, and wastewater overall decrease of 80,000, and non-operating overall decrease of 152,000. Main thing is our debt service was completed in 20 there. So we take the TML 2020 results and see how we rank up on water cost. We sent this out to the council after the June workshop. For residential, based on a 5,000 gallon usage in cities with population between 30 and 50,000, which is how the TML survey works, we rank 14 out of 14th from the highest. So it's a pretty good spot to be in.
So the numbers for our sister cities are estimates or last year's numbers?
I took their data from off of their water utilities and calculated what it would be 5,000 for those that didn't respond.
Okay, those are real numbers.
Those are real numbers, yeah.
But now you're going into Fort Worth and into Tarrant County, and we haven't done that on other things. Oh, in Houston.
This is not me. This is not me. This is TML. I've used the TML results, so I don't control what cities.
Yeah, but what we hear from are the people that are around here, like Lancaster and Cedar Hill. I don't hear from Weatherford, Holcomb City, Burleson, Bedford, Keller, Hurst.
We're below Lancaster and Cedar Hill,
Nacogdoches,
and we're not far off from DeSoto. And so then this is how we rank. If you take on our commercial side, based on a 50,000 gallon usage, you see that we rank 18th. So we're definitely below Lancaster, Cedar Hill, and DeSoto. And if you look at the wastewater cost, we rank third behind DeSoto and Lancaster. Just make a note that we do use winter averaging, and not all cities do that. Some cities do actual water usage, and some cities have different ways of doing winter averaging. So that's really hard to have an apple-to-apple comparison for all the cities there. But that's how we rank.
What happens when they don't respond to TML survey though? How do you know that?
Because they're not on there.
But I mean, how are you?
I calculated it. I got the information and calculated based on 5,000 gallons. I got their information off of from their rates that they publish for their citizens on their master fee schedules. And then same thing with the wastewater costs for commercial. We rank number 4. Only behind DeSoto, Cedar Hill, and Lancaster. There's also different billing formulas that people use for calculating commercial. We do our wastewater based on 85% of actual water usage. And so let's get into the solid waste fund. As you can see, based on where we propose that the budget is going to end up at, we're going to be having an ending fund balance of about $426,000. That's about half in terms of number of days of fund balance. And we would like to have a target of 60-day fund balance. So we definitely have to look at doing a rate increase for our garbage, for our solid waste, because we need to keep that fund balance up in case of storms or other things that would cause us to have to dip into that fund.
On one of the public comments, it asked about that 85 cents per month rate increase. Did I miss that?
There's no, I don't know where that comment came from. There's no 85% increase.
Okay.
I'm not sure where where they came up with that.
146.
So revenue total increased by 328, expenditures increased at 318. We're anticipating about a 3% increase on our garbage contract services. And that's it for utility fund. Now, hand over to Jennifer for move into the other funds.
Just going back with that, maybe a reference to it, maybe a typo. She references page 146, and in the block on FY 2021, there's an 1865 versus an 18, and the difference is 65 cents, and maybe
Oh, yeah,
put
it
in
is.
85
Right.
instead of 65. That's what she was referring to.
Yeah,
right there.
true. Just leave it.
Yeah, and also, real quick, we gave you the master fee schedule too at the back, and there were rates put in there, but again, we're not proposing to increase solid waste rates, so that will be removed from the proposed master fee schedule at the end of the budget. But it's not 85 cents either, so.
Right.
Yeah, that essentially the interpretation there is that increase is what we anticipate for our costs going up, which without a rate increase, we're eating.
And just real quick, I mean, you can get this later, but I forgot a page for you guys to replace in your book, and it's page 21, the budget overview, and all it is changing, updating the NNR rate and the VA rate on the tax that we already talked about, so I'll just put it right here. Okay. Going into the other funds, not much has changed since we presented this to you back in June. Talking about economic development here compared to the FY20 adopted budget. Our sales tax is better. As you know, the proposed or the revised sales tax in economic development is only 6% down as compared to FY20 adopted. As far as the expenses go, from the budget, nothing has changed, but I will say that our Toyota abatement bids have come in, and what's been, we're going to be bringing back to council next week. That came in to be $168,000 approximately. So you'll be seeing that. It's already been approved by the board, the PC board. So that will be coming to you next week, I believe, in the council. So that number did change, but it's not reflected in the budget, in the revised budget. Proposed economic development, again, nothing has changed other than the revenues. Again, we're projecting a 6% decrease in the sales tax. But everything else is the same. We're increasing the demo and rebuild program and increasing the facade incentive program. Hotel,
We
motel.
increased the demo program?
What's that?
Demo building, we increased money, go back to that.
We increased it over FY20 adopted. Before it was at 100,000, and now we increased it by 50,000. So we have 150,000 that we are reserving for that purpose.
Anybody used it?
Why would we increase something for demoing more buildings that I'm against anyway? We haven't even talked about, I mean, what are we
Mr.
doing?
Anderson, if I could, that program is not, the name of it is the Demo Rebuild Program, but it is for those buildings such as, like the Dickey's Barbecue. That building was not completely redemoed, was not completely demoed. However, it was gutted and it was repurposed. And so that type of incentive comes out of that program. The Chase Bank building over there on Cedar Ridge that was in front of Thibodeau's and Subway, that repurpose of that building, it was not completely demoed. A portion of it was demoed and it was repurposed, and that came out of that line item.
How much is in there if we've increased it by 50,000?
It was 100, now it's 150.
21?
The page, 21?
Did these answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, so going to hotel motel, again, this is comparing FY20 adopted to the revised. Again, nothing has changed here from when we presented this back in June. We are projecting a 34% loss in the hotel motel tax revenues due to COVID. But we did make some supplement reductions there with the wayfinding signage as that's being postponed, the multicultural fusion fest, and we reduced advertising as the new website's not completed yet. For proposed, we're assuming continued COVID-19 impacts to the hotel motel industry, so we're assuming 16.8% reduction in revenue over the FY20 adopted. The expenses do include, we're adding in the Duncanville Football Classic for this coming year, added a Hampton Inn Suites incentive tax rebate, but we did reduce for the Museum of International Culture since that is closed.
And council, as you know, those requests for those grants will be coming forth to you for individual consideration. Obviously, ALW, the reason why that we added in this year is because you guys did award it last year for consideration. And so if that's an item that does not move forward, obviously it wouldn't be increased by that much. That amount just would not be utilized.
Moving on to the field house, obviously we are continuing to go by the guidelines that are changing every day when it comes to COVID and gatherings and so forth. So continue to lose revenue for the field house in the FY20 revised. We canceled summer camp, which is a big revenue generator for the field house, as well as had to cancel GASO, which is another big revenue generator event. But we did modify the expenses to reflect the closures, the canceling of summer camp. We reduced contractual services and part-time salaries and hours. We furloughed staff during the month of May, reduced beverage food costs.
Hey, we've talked about before, and I know since we have reduced the number of events there, for parking, for its expense for parking, have we looked at that again for the way to zero revenue? Not much, but it's some.
I do believe, and Bart could probably talk
about revenue for parking?
Yes.
There are some events that we are doing that. In fact, the event this past weekend was a grappling event, which we made $3,000 on parking. So we have done that for select events. However, for a lot of the basketball events, the regional and national events, our competitors don't charge for parking. So it becomes kind of a competitive thing that we don't want to price ourselves out of the market and have an expense for our folks that they don't have in other places.
Okay, so they are. So you did.
So we are doing that some, yes, sir.
But you have checked to see if others, because I thought they were.
Yes, we have.
When I went to some.
Yes, we have checked with others. Let me make sure.
All right, thank you.
And just to kind of reiterate, if it wasn't for COVID, the field house would have been doing much better this year as they were trending ahead until March. So for the proposed, we did go back and reevaluate the revenues and the expenses based on kind of what we're projecting for continued impact of COVID-19. So as compared to FY20 adopted, we're projecting a loss of 21.8% in revenues. Again, it's just like the events in the fall. And on the expense side, we did cut 2 full-time positions and reduced part-time hours. The 2 full-time positions could possibly be reevaluated in the future, but that would obviously depend on the revenues. And further reduce the food and beverage costs. So FY21, that's what we're projecting. Internal service funds, again, nothing has really changed here since we presented this to you before. As you've seen throughout the general fund and other funds, we did reduce fleet replacement contributions to 40%, and we're catching up on some purchases for this fiscal year. IT replacement, no change. On the liability workers' comp, there's no change in contributions, but our workers' comp claims were higher than what was adopted in FY20, approximately by $75,000. For the proposed budget, the changes in the fund balance there, fleet replacement, we did increase that from, I'm sorry, we didn't talk about one thing. Fleet replacement, that's still at 40%. Replacement schedule for next year, we're expecting $1.1 million, which includes a new fire engine. We did push out some scheduled replacements in patrol vehicles to the 3-year with the new patrol vehicles. The IT replacement, we did increase that contribution to 80%, and that's mainly due to a large replacement year that's coming up with the virtual environment replacement. And then again, self-insurance liability, we did reduce those contributions by 3%, small decrease there, but our premiums are expected to go up by 22%. And that's really all I have for the other funds. Okay. For CIP, just real briefly, you saw these slides back in June, and there's a full detail within your books that do detail out kind of the 5-year plan for these different CIP funds. Alley fund summary here, as you can see what we're planning for next year. There we have a construction project and a design project that totals $378,000. And then for the next 5 years, it's a design 1 year, replacement the next year for the alley. Again, the solid waste is what pays for these alley projects. Drainage fund, the big project next year coming up is the storm water pipe replacement and bag wall. And then moving out in the latter years, we have some infrastructure assessment, various drainage improvements, some alley reconstruction that the drainage fund pays for. And again, there's a full list in your book that details them project by project and cost by cost.
What quarter is this 370 Middle Creek?
What's that?
What quarter will we have that 370 Middle Creek stormwater?
Meadow Creek, that's, ideally we award it this quarter, is what we're trying to do, is award it now. That's
before the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah. On the streets fund, and just on the general fund, we are contributing $265,000 into next year to cover the wintergreen phase 1 with Dallas County, as well as construction administration for the US 67 Green Ribbon project. There's also a couple of design projects in there. As far as the planned projects, we have many street projects planned, but of course that depends on the continued funding. It is earmarked within the general fund as a transfer, but it, of course it depends on how things are doing from year to year, because streets does not have a regular identified funding stream like utilities and drainage and alley. Additionally, highlighted there, you'll see sidewalk CIP projects. We don't have a funding stream for those as well, but I did highlight those there. What can be done under CDBG and reimbursed by CDBG we will do, but anything else out of that will depend on the funding. And then utilities, what's happening in the utilities. Certainly doing a lot of pipe bursting projects next year. Planning on rehabbing the pump house and the ground storage tanks, installing security cameras at the Clark Water Tower, a FEMA emergency generator at the Summit tank, and then various projects after that. Again, they're listed in detail in your book. And just throwing this map in there again, just to remind you of the mitigation with the SSOs that, with all the pipe bursting projects, we are definitely doing much better for the SSOs. But then on the CIP. And Mr. Ramey is next.
Oh, yes.
And the last.
Where are we gonna build Daniel Dale Road? So is that, well, that's not in that, where we gonna, where's Daniel?
That's when, we're tearing that one up to get that out on the streets.
You got the plans are done?
They're like 90%.
Oh.
So later, it'll be this calendar year.
Really?
Just trying up the loose ends. I guess you said the briefer takes off their mask, is that?
Yeah.
So we wanted to just talk for a minute about the alcohol, the alcohol ordinance and the fees that come along with that. So let me just give you some background on it. So the alcohol ordinance has been in effect since 2003. And the next slide we'll talk about some of the what's incorporated in the ordinance. We've had 2 updates in 15 and 17 related to alcohol at special events and alcohol being allowed if a city facility is rented out. The reason why we're bringing this to your attention is in June, we discovered that we never implemented the ordinance for restaurants that serve alcohol, only the retail businesses that do like off-premise sales or takeout. And so that brings us tonight to get your guidance on how we want to go forward. So again, this is the ordinance highlights. I want to orient you to the green, amber, and red. So green again meets that. Our ordinance, that particular stipulation in our ordinance is full compliance. If it's amber, it's partial compliance. In other words, it's only applying to the off-premise and retail only, not the restaurants. And then red is something where what we're doing is not in compliance with our ordinance. So we are in compliance with prohibiting beer sales in residential districts. We are not in compliance because we do not prohibit sales at restaurants with drive-through or curb service, because since the ordinance came out, state said we can't not do that. So of course, Applebee's has takeout and they serve alcohol, Olive Garden, Papa's Barbecue, all those. So we've got to update the ordinance just so that we're in compliance with state law. We are prohibiting the alcohol within 300 feet, but we're only permitting and charging fees to retail and off-premise, so like 7-Elevens, grocery stores, etc.
Papa sell alcohol? Papa sell alcohol?
Which?
I thought she was drinking.
Yeah, they sell alcohol.
Does Papa sell alcohol?
They sell beer.
Okay. Is that 300 feet from a church or school, is that like written in, stone, or is it,
Yes.
can the council take action and?
Well, it's written in ordinance.
Yeah.
But we could take a special circumstance and do something different.
I don't know if their TABC has any other rules. And
I've done it in other cities, so it's.
If it's not a TABC requirement that we're modeling, then
Well, the
you can make it whatever
TABC
you
kicks
want.
it to the city, so.
Well, then.
It's in our ordinance, yes.
But our ordinance says 300 feet.
If we had a special, I don't have anything, but I'm just curious, if we had a special place, you could.
Well, then, if it was something really special, then it would probably be something that comes to council because it'd be more of a SUP
Yes.
or another
I'm
variance.
talking about something unique. I'm not, it happens all the time.
What, your house? Can we all
No,
go?
it happens all the time, right? There's alcohol below me.
I'm just messing.
We can amend the ordinance if it's something we look at. I don't think you can do it on case by case, because I think you have to be able to apply that evenly throughout. You can't have, everyone has to be under the same rules, so you can't have them come and apply and say, I want a special consideration and not the other. But we can look at that and reduce that requirement if you wish.
And finally, it established penalties for violating the ordinance, which was basically not paying your permit fees. And permit and fees, again, that was only for the retail off-premise. So again, the current state. So right now, we again are not prohibiting alcohol sales at restaurants with drive-through or curbside service. We are only permitting and collecting fees from businesses that sell alcohol for off-premise consumption, like 7-Eleven. We have 39 business, retail, off-premise type businesses in the city. The city is not permitting and collecting fees from restaurants that serve alcohol, which are 22.
Why?
I don't know.
Isn't that kind of bizarre?
I don't know. We haven't been collecting for 17 years.
That doesn't even make sense. That you would collect from Winco and
Ma'am,
You would collect from
that's
the
why we're here
restaurants?
tonight, because we found this out and we're going, hey, this is
And you have
what's
to
going
talk to
on.
us about that? That sounds like some, just need to.
Well, we need input on various levels, and we're gonna have some questions. We do need your
Yes.
input on some fixes to this
How
ordinance.
much
So
do
some
you
of-
charge them? What are you charging them by?
We charge half TABC rate. Whatever they pay for TABC, we charge half is what's in the ordinance. So I just want to do a little fun summary, and so the reason why, again, this is pertinent in terms of going back and say, yep, we need to start charging restaurants. These are fees. TABC collects their money every other year. And it just happens that the majority of our restaurants are odd year collectors. So what we do with the restaurants as we go into fiscal year 21 would be looking at almost $20,000 in collections.
Let's collect.
It's just bizarre.
Yep, let's collect.
And you're not permitting them either?
And they're not being permitted, and so we'll talk about that in the discussion questions. So again, TABC permits are issued every 2 years, and again, these are the common TABC permits, what they charge, and then what we would charge based on our ordinance now, the half fee. What I do want to highlight is if you look at for the restaurants, it's a declining scale. So they start really high and then they get down to a steady state at the third renewal, which would be around the sixth year. And then it's that until they quit selling alcohol. So we looked at the other Best Southwest, and the ordinance that we have on the books is in conformance with Lancaster and DeSoto. Cedar Hill only charges in their ordinance off-premise and retail, but everybody charges the fee is at the half the TABC rate. So this is for the discussion. Again, if there are any questions, any heart issues that you guys see regarding continuing to, adjusting the ordinance to continue to permit the alcohol sales if they have a takeout or a drive-through. We're not already doing that because that's what the state wants. If we do not want to do that, then we would have to actually prohibit drive-through windows and curbside service.
Well, I think we should let them.
So, keep reading. So the next question was, given that we haven't charged restaurants for the last 17 years, do we want to just continue with the off-premise, or do we want to charge the restaurants? And if so, do we want to do a transition period, or is like, hey, guess what, guys? On 1 October, it's we're starting the restaurants. The pros, again, is we are when we have the permits with the restaurants, then we have compliance at the local level instead of relying on TABC. So I know in the past we've had problems with like Greedy's, and then we had to bring in TABC. But if we have problems with restaurants for issues, and we can always threaten to revoke our license without having to kick it up a notch. And again, it would bring our procedures in compliance with our current ordinance. The con is it does add an additional approval for restaurant owners. They've got to get their TABC permit renewed every other year.
It's already hard. It's already hard as heck on them as it is. It's just like, what do we got to do? Just pound them into the ground? I mean, to me, that's what I see. It's just another level of bureaucracy and fees on something that's already super expensive. I don't know.
That's the feedback we need. I mean, if that is something, if that's the consensus of the council, then we need that input.
Well, you rent though to people who serve alcohol, right?
Well, I've been around a lot. I know a lot of people
No,
who
but
have
do
to
you
get
rent
these.
to people who haven't served alcohol?
Well, of course I do, yeah.
Okay, well, that's what I thought.
But I mean, it does, I mean, I see them struggle. I see people struggle, not just people that rent from me, but, I mean, I wish you, I don't disrespect you when you say something. I wish you would do the same for me.
I'm not disrespecting, I'm asking you
You're
a
just looking at
question.
me, but it's just hard on, the fees are extremely high already with the TABC for small restaurants and with alcohol sales already.
So what does TABC charge?
I don't know, you saw them up there. Plus, that's just part of it. That's just part of their fee.
Slide 88, yeah, there it is.
So the.
And then
the
you got huge
permit,
fees just to get
They
the
gotta
permit.
continue to keep, do they pay that every year or one-time fee?
It's every other year, so.
Every 2 years.
They pay 6,000, like if we're a brand new
Plus-
business,
plus
they
all
would
their
pay
other taxes.
$6,000 for this, and then they pay us $3,000 the first year, then 2 years later, the rate goes down and it would be $2,250 for the city. Second renewal, 2 years after that, $1,500, and then 2 years after that, and then every other biannual renewal would be the $750.
So TABC gets the preponderance of the money.
Yeah, they get a lot.
Well, they
Get all the taxes.
Yeah, they make a lot of sales. Money, I don't know if I would, you know, much as I support small business, I'd still say we probably should charge them, honestly. I mean, they're getting
Greg said we got 22 businesses this would apply to.
$20,000. We didn't look all the way.
22 restaurants
22.
that serve alcohol. When we ran the numbers, I was preparing the slides. So we could have 2 new ones come on board and 1 fall off, but at the time we were tracking 22. And the last thing again goes back to, I think where you're going, Councilman Anderson, is do we just want to relook the permit fee? Where right now, again, the permit fee is half the TABC fee. Cost maybe, if you want to change it, that's, whatever you want to be.
Which by the time you manage it and collect it and do
But
all
we've
that,
gotta-
you're
we
not
gotta-
making any money anyway off of it.
I mean, that just covers, it's, we already have the staff. It's not more staff, it just helps offset, their, the building inspection division. So
It's just one more thing you gotta still do though. It's gonna cost you more money to collect that too as a staff, right? I mean, it's gonna.
Well, it'd be the same staff, so we're not bringing any new labor. It's still the permit team that's gotta do it, but yeah.
But it is additional work, and that's what Lonnie's, I think, point is. I tend to agree with Councilman Anderson, is that, especially during the time right now, if you start hitting some of these businesses, especially some of the smaller ones, they might just say, we're gone.
Where are they gonna go? They're gonna go to the city that's charging as well.
So.
I would say if we could just leave it alone until maybe early next year. And again, like Councilman Matt Burnett, I mean, that might just be the straw that just puts them out, whether they can go anywhere or not. That might just be it.
So I guess my question is,
The question is, do we continue to ignore an ordinance that's on the books? That's the problem. We have an ordinance on the books that the city is not in compliance with its own laws. Do we want to continue
fix the
to
ordinance.
ignore it that's on
Whatever we
what's on
decide.
the books, or do we want to rewrite it, which won't take a whole lot of work, I guess, to go ahead and eliminate that single piece?
Whichever way you go, you need to fix the ordinance, so.
we have to fix it anyway
Yeah.
bring the drive-throughs, and then it's like, all right, are we going back to the restaurants? And if we are, do we want to delay implementation, or again, do I just tell my staff, we're going to redo the ordinance, don't collect from restaurants?
Maybe you can
new restaurants.
maybe you could use the grandfather clause for them, and then anyone else new coming in, we start charging.
Well, I think we
Still
also
gotta write it.
Yeah, I think we also, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, I think we want to have it even like starting like October 1 or whatever. So what we need to do is make the changes anyway to the ordinance. And we come in there and have that provision. The council grants it to say, we will waive the enforcement of this for a year. We can then go back and start notifying restaurants, if that's the desire of the council, to give them some time so they can build that in their budgets as well. So we can build that in there for the council action. But if we could, can we just get your policy guidance on question 1? We're still good, just allowing for drive-through curbside service?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And council?
They can take it to go?
Yeah, they can.
Yes. And the state's actually relaxed that even more because of COVID. The second question is, does council want staff to start permitting restaurant alcohol? I think we got the answer to that, so we'll bring that to you, and we can put in a provision that gives 1 year delay, but then we'll give notice to restaurants or whatever to say, this is when we'll begin the enforcement of this, if that's what you wish.
Can I ask for a point of
we can still say
clarification?
that this is what we're going to do. It will be re-examined in 1 year.
Can I ask for?
You can do that too. You can re-examine it, but you're taking action on it then. If that's something we want to do, you can do it now. or we could wait a year to see what happens. And, yeah, you can do that any time, yeah.
There are two pieces that I think maybe instead of bundling them, because permitting, just saying, hey, come in, get your permit, that's at no cost. But it then gives us some leverage if we have a restaurant that's not playing by the rules. Now, if you want to delay the fee, maybe is that more of what I'm hearing is, hey, let's start permitting them, but we won't start charging them until 2022. And really, in essence, what that means is these businesses really won't be paying a permit fee until 2023, because that's when the majority of our businesses, they're odd number businesses, odd year businesses.
Are we having trouble with this? I mean, we've
had problems with restaurants in the past.
Like what? I mean, like not having their license, or all
No, we've had criminal issues in a number of restaurants, and because we don't have because they don't have permits through us, we're limited. And so when we try to get help from the TABC, that's even limited. So we've had actually 2 examples of bad players out there, restaurants. They're not family friendly. They're not the restaurants I think that Duncanville would want. And the one that was on Cedar Ridge, Grady, was a problem for at least 6 months. We finally had to take legal action, get TABC to help us with that to get that closed down. But you had violence, outbreaks, shootings out there, really bad problems. So this isn't for going in, somebody else. These are criminal issues.
Neighborhoods were unhappy. The neighborhoods behind them.
Yeah, this gives us the ability, if it's a real problem, that we can revoke that. That is the legal mechanism from the city's perspective. Otherwise, we're going to rely on the TABC.
But this looks like we're encouraging them to do takeout instead of.
They could kind of.
Yeah, but that's following what's already fixed.
Yeah, it's already there. The state allows for that. Yeah.
Isn't that?
So remember, like even in COVID, Governor Abbott relaxed when the restaurants were closed for doing takeout. He relaxed the rules on being able to do takeout on alcohol. You couldn't like serve the actual mixed beverage, but you could actually give them the components of that and then take it home. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he relaxed it during the COVID, and again they can do that by state law.
Well, for permitting them, but not imposing the fee.
That's what I meant by giving the year delay.
Okay, I don't want to make sure.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
In the permitting, isn't that just another line on the application for the CO? I mean, isn't that just another?
It'd be part of your CO process.
Be part of your CO.
That would follow with that.
So, yeah, it'd be.
But sometimes, the council member, they don't tell us that. So what happens, they go through the CO process, and then they don't tell us that, and they come back, and there's a quick, my gosh.
Will they be violating the?
Well, we would be communicating that to them, just to make sure that's what they were doing, especially at a restaurant. Are you doing alcohol sales?
Yeah, doesn't it say, do you serve alcohol already?
That's right.
Well, we have, I mean, it helps us in multiple areas, because that happens here. Let's just say that. On the retail side, it helps us get a better handle on what's going on.
I do agree with the permitting, but I'd like for the task force here to ask some of those business owners what they think about some of it. As far as the permitting, what that would cost, what it would do to them, how it would affect them now and in the future.
What are they going to answer?
I'm going to say, it's going to
hurt me. Of course it's going to hurt me.
At least let them have a say. I mean, let's just hear it. It doesn't hurt anything.
To be honest, Joe, I think we could come to this decision by ourselves. I'm just thinking, we appreciate the input that Monty and Mark are getting from that task force, but I think what we're looking at is money, and the money is we don't want their money right now. All we really want is the permit, and we'll figure out the money at some other point in time. But the permit gives us the enforcement action if we need to. When they get nasty doing something, they get criminal, then we can actually start pulling some guns. And so, I'd say, my vote is to go ahead and change the ordinance so that they have to get a permit, but we're not going to impose the fee.
I can live with that.
Okay, I think we've got guidance.
Ta-da.
Mayor, that's it.
We are done?
Yes.
Look at that.
Serious?
We can go longer,
We usually have an hour left.
Calling for adjournment, let's call it 9 o'clock.